Chapter 29:14. The battle broke out. However, Lin Sun couldn't see anything from this moment onwards. The Tao laws and means used in a battle of this level were beyond the scope of his understanding. In fact, even sound was isolated. The reason was that even the Tao sounds in the battle emitted the power of the eternal realm, which was a fatal threat to someone at his level. Lin Sun couldn't help but feel nervous. He even thought of many things in the past. He thought of the scene outside the God's Relic, when fourth senior brother Ling Xuanzi and martial uncle Kong Ju brought him along and were chased by the immortal realm powerhouses. He thought of how Xia Ji and him were bathed in blood when they went to the eternal true domain. He also thought of how Tai Xian took him away when they left the flowing light forbidden zone. Those past events were related to being besieged and chased by the enemy. They were so depressing and infuriating. This time, a similar scene seemed to appear again, after an unknown period of time. Suddenly, Lin Sun's figure shook and his vision and hearing recovered. Then, he saw Chen Linkong panting, his hair disheveled, his figure broken and blurry. He looked extremely miserable, which made Lin Sun's heart skip a beat. The Banisher spun in the void, resisting the attacks of the old antique. However, the Banisher clearly couldn't resist for long and was wailing violently. In the distance, more than 10 Eternal Realm antiques had cold and indifferent expressions. Chen Linkong, you're just a Dharma image. It's not easy for you to last until now. Stop struggling. Someone said in a deep voice. Although they said this, their attacks became even more ferocious and fierce. Dharma image. Lin Sun couldn't help but be stunned. A Dharma idol was fighting against more than a dozen Eternal Realm true bodies. How powerful was Chen Linkong's true body? At this moment, Chen Linkong sighed and said in a self-deprecating voice, "Ever since I was born, I've never been in such a sorry state." He suddenly raised his head, flames burning in his eyes, and the self-deprecating expression on his face was replaced by a touch of calmness. "Originally, I couldn't bear to kill you because you're all pitiful people trapped in the ruins of creation. But now it seems that I've been thinking too highly of myself." As he spoke, his entire body began to burn and a peerlessly oppressive aura began to spread out in the starry sky. The pupils of all the others narrowed, and they seemed to have noticed that something was off. "Let's attack together. We can't give him a chance to turn the tables. Kill him at all costs." "Alright." Boom. Amidst the sounds of conversation, the more than 10 old geezers utilized their trump cards, and all of them emanated vast divine might as they withdrew their treasures. At this instant, a peerless torrent of might covered the heavens and the earth, and it crushed space as it smashed down. The Banisher that bore the brunt of the impact wailed, and it was blasted flying fiercely. Boom. Even Chen Linkong, whose figure seemed to be on fire, was unable to resist the impact of this power, and his body was reduced to ashes. Lin Sun was about to be affected. Clang. The Banisher that flew back abruptly let out an impassioned howl. It revolved in space, and then a circle of sword chi that was like a river of flames swept out. It easily crushed and incinerated all of those attacks into nothingness, causing them to disperse in space. This, the pupils of the dozen or so antiques in the distance constricted. Then, he saw a figure appear in front of Lin Sun, completely surrounded by billions of flames. A mysterious law transformed into a god? Patterns flowed about, and it caused him to seem like a god of fire. Shockingly, this person was Chen Linkong. However, unlike before, the aura that suffused his body was terrifying to the point it caused those old geezers in the distance to feel a wave of pressure. In an instant, their expressions became unprecedentedly heavy because they'd recognized that this was Chen Linkong's main body. However, they'd never imagined that Chen Linkong's main body would actually be so terrifying. Clang! The Banisher cheered as it fell into Chen Linkong's palm, and it emanated clear howls without end. Lin Sun's originally strained heart surged with excitement. At this moment, Chen Linkong was formidable to the point he was unable to estimate Chen Linkong's strength, and just looking at Chen Linkong gave him a feeling of ease. It seemed like he was fearless even if the heavens and the earth collapsed and the world was destroyed. Young brother, watch carefully. Chen Linkong flicked his finger, and the banisher swiftly soared into the sky before slashing down. Bang! It was only a single strike, yet when it slashed down, the peerless might it revealed shook the figures of over 10 Eternal Realm old geezers to the point their bodies shook while their auras roiled, and it was uncomfortable to the point they almost coughed up blood. Kill. These old geezers naturally wouldn't allow themselves to be attacked passively, and they attacked in unison. This expanse of the starry sky was in disorder, and it fell into a chaotic state. Terrifying Tao arts and treasures swept over like a dense and violent storm. Chen Linkong slashed once more in an unhurried manner. Bang! The attacks of those old geezers suffered a heavy blow and were blasted into dispersal by this strike. Moreover, even their figures that were charging forward suffered an impact, and some of them even staggered back. He's accumulating strength with his sword insight. We can't allow this to continue. Quickly stop him. One of the old geezers seemed to have seen through something and shouted loudly. The hearts of the other old geezers shook. All of them seemed as if they were fighting desperately, and their imposing auras grew even more terrifying. On the other hand, Chen Linkong's expression was calm as he stood towering on the spot. A myriad of strands of flames flowed throughout his body, and he didn't show any signs of retreating or dodging. Conversely, he attacked ceaselessly. Slash! 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 The banisher slashed down incessantly from midair, and it blasted the attacks of all the old geezers to the point their vital blood roiled while their expressions changed incessantly. When Chen Linkong executed the 8th strike, some of those old geezers couldn't help but cough up blood, some of their Tao weapons were damaged, and some were even injured by the sword qi. All of them were in extremely sorry states. However, they couldn't be bothered about all of this, because right at this moment, every single one of them noticed a strand of lethal danger surging through their bodies. It was like the end of the world was about to arrive, and it caused a chill to run down their spines. Since they'd attained the Eternal Realm, they weren't afraid of the changes in the world, and they were confident in their ability to overcome the calamity of an era. But at this moment they sensed the aura of death. Let's go. They chose to teleport and dodge at the first possible moment. With the strength they possessed, if they fought desperately with all their might, then they felt that even formidable enemies at the same realm of cultivation wouldn't be able to stop them from escaping. However, right at this moment in the sky above Creation City that was extremely far away, strands of the energy of the laws that seemed like a taboo surged out, and it was like a large net had been weaved together and instantly stretched throughout the starry sky. The energy of the river diagram's laws. All of those old geezers felt their entire bodies stiffen. At this moment, they who were capable of disregarding the restraints and obstruction of space seemed as if they'd fallen into a swamp or were like fleeing fish that were frozen in water. Slash. Right at this moment, Chen Linkong executed the 9th strike with the banisher that he'd been accumulating strength for a long time. This strike seemed to be capable of splitting the heavens and the earth apart, destroying the ages, and slashing through space. This sword seemed to have the meaning of being free and unfettered for eternity and eternity. This strike was simple, but it was beyond the scope of the rules of the Great Way in this world. It didn't belong to this world. When this strike fell, the unparalleled sword light instantly drowned the starry sky, and everything turned white. Lin Sun's heart palpitated. If it weren't for the protection of Chen Linkong's power, just a wisp of aura that escaped from this strike could have killed him hundreds of times. No! An unwilling roar resounded, shaking the heavens and the earth. We've been trapped by the ruins of creation for so long, but we've never thought that we'd encounter a disaster today. Eternal? It's all fake. An angry roar came out, full of resentment. Eternal doesn't mean that we won't die, A helpless voice drifted in the air, full of bitterness. I hate it! All kinds of voices rang out, and then they stopped abruptly and disappeared one after another. When Lin Sun's vision became clear again, he saw that the starry sky had long been in a mess. There were twisted and cracked cracks everywhere, and the raging space turbulence swept through, making whimpering sounds like ghosts wailing and wolves howling. The more than 10 eternal realm existences had also disappeared. His eyes were filled with desolation. Dead. Lin Sun was shocked to the extreme. With my strength, I can't kill them. At most, I can only seriously injure them. After all, it's too difficult to kill those who have stepped into the eternal realm. Chun Linkong, who was beside him, restrained his aura and said softly, however, with the help of the river diagram that my grandfather left in the divine city of creation, I have a chance to kill them this time. The river diagram. Lin Sun's heart shook fiercely. He remembered the black tortoiseshell treasure that the green-robed man left in the sky above the divine city of creation. However, he still couldn't understand it in his heart. The eternal realm was not afraid of the erosion of time, the vicissitudes of the world, and was strong enough to resist the 5 decay Tao tribulations and deal with the destruction of an era. What kind of supreme existence was this? But such an existence could also die. There is no one in this world who can't die. Even those who have attained the eternal realm and are immortal will be attacked by the 5 decay Tao tribulations, killed by the great silence lifeless tribulation, and obliterated by the dark hand hiding behind the scenes. When Chun Linkong said this, he seemed to realize something and couldn't help but sigh. After using the power of my original body this time, I can no longer stay in the divine ruins of creation. Otherwise, I will be attacked and imprisoned by the invisible force around the divine ruins of creation by the dark hand. His voice revealed a trace of depression. Although he killed a group of eternal realm existences, he lost the opportunity to stay in the divine ruins of creation, which made him feel a little unwilling. This was one of the reasons why he was unwilling to use his original body before. Lin Sun couldn't understand Chun Linkong's thoughts and said, Senior Wuyang and the others are still fighting. Should we go to rescue them? Chun Linkong smiled and said, Why, aren't you in a hurry to leave? Lin Sun said seriously, Saving people is the most important thing. Everything else is not important. Chun Linkong patted Lin Sun on the shoulder and said, Your temper is very much to my liking. Since you have forced me to use my original body, I naturally can't let it go so easily. As he spoke, he teleported with Lin Sun. In a few breaths, they had returned to the divine ruins of creation along the original path. But to Lin Sun's surprise, in the starry sky, the battle of Wuyang, Longxiang, Xingjia, and Dark Blood Underworld Emperor had just come to an end when they arrived. The Dharma images of the eternal realm were all destroyed. Chun Linkong seemed to realize something and couldn't help but smile bitterly. He let out a long sigh and said, Everyone, why did you also use your original bodies? In this case, there is only one way left for you in the future. P.S. Additional updates are sent. Please guarantee the monthly tickets. Chapter 29:15. Hearing Chun Linkong's sigh, Wuyang, Xingjia, and the other powerful figures of the ancient desolation realm smiled. We've been trapped here for a long time. Even if we're trapped here again, it won't make any difference. Wuyang said, On the contrary, we have to thank Brother Chun for your guidance. If you hadn't led the way, how could we have achieved what we have today in the ruins of fate? That's right. There are gains and losses in the Tao of choice. We've already proven eternity and don't care about these things anymore. Long Xiang also said loudly. The opponent has already used his power. If we still hesitate, we won't be able to break through today's situation. Xingjia said gently. Looking at the expressions of the other powerful figures, they were quite calm and indifferent. Chun Linkong smiled bitterly again and said, Fine. Senior, what's going on? Lin Sun, who had been watching all this, couldn't help but feel puzzled. Chen Linkong thought for a while and told the cause of the matter. A long time ago, Chen Linkong led the way to the ruins of fate with a group of powerful figures of the ancient desolation realm to find a secluded cultivation place called the Great Ming Era. Although the cultivation of these powerful figures of the ancient desolation realm improved by leaps and bounds in the following years, they became the same as the cultivators of other eras and could no longer leave the ruins of fate. According to Chen Linkong's deduction, this was the power produced by the invisible rule power that the mastermind had covered the ruins of fate. There was only one way to fight against this kind of power: prove eternity and resolve the Great Silence fatality disaster. Speaking of this, Chen Linkong said, "Before this disaster is resolved, the true body must not be exposed. Otherwise, the invisible rule power covering the ruins of fate will definitely capture its aura. In this way, if we successfully resolve this disaster in the future, we can't leave unless we have the ability to fight against the invisible rule power of the ruins of fate." Hearing this, Lin Sun finally understood and couldn't help saying, "In other words, if Senior Wu Yang and the others want to leave in the future, this is the only way." Chen Linkong nodded, yes. Lin Sun couldn't help but feel a little guilty and said, "It started because of me. I didn't expect to ruin your plan." Before he could finish, he was interrupted by Wu Yang. "Before we resolve the Great Silence lifeless tribulation, we have no intention of leaving. I don't know how long it will take to truly resolve the Great Silence lifeless tribulation, so you don't have to feel indebted for this matter." Xing Jia smiled and said, "That's right. Even if you comprehend the power of the origin of creation, not everyone can truly resolve the Great Silence lifeless tribulation. It's clearly too early to talk about the final way out. You've already done them a great favor," Chen Linkong said softly. "If you hadn't comprehended the Fortune Star Dome's profundities and become the master of the Fortune Divine City, they wouldn't have had the chance to enter the city to comprehend the profundities of the Fortune Origin Source." Exactly. Many powerful figures of the ancient desolation realm smiled and nodded. Lin Sun felt much better and said, "Don't worry, seniors. I'll definitely come to the ruins of fate again and help you get out of here." His voice was resolute. "Of course you'll have to come back in the future. You're the master of the Fortune Divine City. In the future, I'm afraid you'll have to take away the river diagram." Chen Linkong looked at Lin Sun meaningfully. Lin Sun nodded. "Since the predicament has been broken, there's no time to lose. I'll send you off first." Chen Linkong looked at Wu Yang and the others. "Will you come back, Brother Chen?" Long Xiang asked. "Of course, I'll at least drink with you again." Chen Linkong smiled. Then, he turned around and left with Lin Sun. "Everyone, let's go to the Fortune Divine City." Wu Yang watched them disappear into the vast starry sky and said softly, "My young friend, take good care of the Sword of Fate. It can be moved from any place in the outside world to the ruins of fate. It's a rare treasure. You may need to use it the next time you come here." Chen Linkong warned Lin Sun on the way. Lin Sun nodded and asked a question in his heart: "Why do you have to leave the ruins of fate after using your original body?" Chen Linkong said, "Although the power of the mastermind can't kill me, it's not difficult to trap me in the ruins of fate. If I don't leave now, it won't be easy for me to leave in the future." As for Wu Yang and the others, they haven't really solved the Great Silence fatal disaster. Otherwise, they could also leave at this time. Alas, in the final analysis, the power of the mastermind is too strong. Chen Linkong's voice revealed a trace of helplessness. "Then where do you plan to go after leaving the ruins of fate?" Lin Sun asked. "The ruins of wonders," Chen Linkong said. "Although I don't know where it is, I have some clues. As long as I probe carefully, I should be able to find it." Speaking of this, Chen Linkong said, "By the way, the one who left these clues is Golden Cicada. This person has a deep relationship with your master, the master of the square inch." If I'm not wrong, Golden Cicada is very likely to go to the ruins of wonders. Lin Sun said, Senior, in your opinion, if my master, the master of the square inch, didn't meet with misfortune, would he also go to the ruins of wonders? Chen Linkong shook his head. It's hard to say. Your master's enemy is in the ninth heaven. No matter where he appears in the future, it won't be strange. On the contrary, after returning to the eternal world, you should seize the time to cultivate. If I'm not wrong, the disaster of the change of era is very likely to come within 1,000 years. Lin Sun's heart shook fiercely. The disaster of the change of era. Did this mean that the current Lingwu era would be destroyed after 1,000 years? Lin Sun shuddered. Of course, there are many variables this time. If such a disaster really happens, it is bound to be different from the past. But no matter what, you have to be prepared in advance. Chen Linkong warned seriously. Lin Sun took a deep breath and nodded. 1,000 years. It was enough for him to seek the cultivation of the eternal realm. My little friend, I will send you here. In the end, Chen Linkong stopped in a vast starry sky. With a wave of his sleeve, a vortex-like portal emerged quietly. Thank you, Senior. Lin Sun cupped his hands. Go quickly. This space-time tunnel leading to the eternal world won't last for long. Chen Linkong said with a smile. Lin Sun nodded, stepped forward, and disappeared in the space-time tunnel. Chen Linkong stood with his hands clasped behind his back, looking elegant like an immortal. 1 month later. The sixth heaven of the eternal world. Chaos Demon Sea. Lin Sun walked there. Many years ago, when he was still at the Ju Xian Imperial Ancestor Realm, he came to the Chaos Demon Sea to search for Master Lu. It was also in the Chaos Demon Sea that Lin Sun obtained the Kuan Progenitor's life bone, a complete divine magnetic mountain, and met Elder Mo Lanshan, Li Chunjun, and the others of the ninth peak of the Yuan sect. Of course, he also met Master Lu. Now, he was already at the peak of the heavenly longevity realm, and could break through to the Nirvana God realm at any time. When he returned to the Chaos Demon Sea, his state of mind was completely different. This place was still as chaotic and turbulent as before. There were killings and bloody things happening everywhere. Lin Sun didn't care about it. He was like a passerby, glancing at it coldly and then hurrying away. After spending a day, Lin Sun saw the Southern Sea Divine Island in the distance. It was on this island that Lin Sun found Master Lu. According to Lin Sun's speculation, after the Luo family moved from Dragon's Pine Divine Mountain, they most likely lived in seclusion here. Because of this, he didn't immediately return to the Yuan sect after returning from the ruins of fortune. Instead, he planned to find the Luo family and settle down his parent. Before he set foot on the Southern Sea Divine Island, Lin Sun's divine sense sensed that something was wrong. There were several extremely powerful auras on the Southern Sea Divine Island. It was obvious that they belonged to the Nirvana God realm cultivators. Lin Sun narrowed his eyes and directly flew over. Stop! Before Lin Sun could reach the island, a gray-robed man with a sword on his back teleported over and blocked his path. Who are you? What are you doing here? His eyes were like lightning as he placed his hands behind his back. His aura was so powerful that it could blot out the sky. It was obvious that he was an old monster who had been in the Nirvana God realm for many years. I'm looking for someone, Lin Sun said casually. Who are you looking for? The gray-robed man was expressionless. He was extremely domineering and aggressive. Lin Sun said, What are you doing here? I'm asking you a question. The gray-robed man's eyes surged with a terrifying divine light. You dare to be so arrogant when you're in the Nirvana God realm? Lin Sun laughed. You're right. You're indeed arrogant. Killing intent flashed in the gray-robed man's eyes as he drew his sword and slashed. Boom! The sword chi tore through the sky, surging with the terrifying law of immortality, raging and overbearing. Lin Sun's figure disappeared into thin air. The next moment, A fist fiercely hit the sword that was slashing down. The two collided, causing a terrifying wave of air to spread. The gray-robed man's figure staggered, and his face suddenly changed. Before he could stand firm, Lin Sun had already grabbed him, directly tearing through the void, breaking through the gray-robed man's resistance, and grabbed the gray-robed man's neck with unparalleled strength. One strike, crossing a great realm and capturing a Nirvana God realm cultivator alive. This scene could be said to be shocking. If the whole Yuan sect saw this, they would probably not dare to imagine that Lin Sun, who had only left for more than 6 years, had already become so powerful. Arrogance will kill you. Tell me, who are you? Lin Sun said indifferently. The gray-robed man who was grabbed by Lin Sun's neck was now full of horror and disbelief. He couldn't figure out how he was captured alive by a heavenly longevity realm cultivator. This old man is Wen Tianyuan, the supreme elder of the Wen clan in the 6th heaven. Hearing this, Lin Sun's past memories were evoked. The 6th heaven. There were many immortal emperor clans here, and they all regarded Lin Sun as a must-kill target. For example, the Wen clan, Hung clan, He clan, Hong clan, Zhu clan, etc. What are you doing here? Lin Sun asked again. I was ordered to search for traces of the Luo clan. Wen Tianyuan seemed very honest. This answer made Lin Sun's heart sink. Whose orders? The orders of the 4 East Emperor clans in the 7th heaven. Speaking of this, Wen Tianyuan seemed to have found something to rely on. He stared coldly at Lin Sun. Taoist friend, if you don't want to cause trouble for yourself, I advise you to quickly let me go. Otherwise, I'm afraid that disaster will befall you. Chapter 29:16. Hearing this threat, Lin Sun was not affected at all. He even wanted to laugh. The 4 Donghuang clans? They're just 4 major powers that are the dogs of the Donghuang clan. When he was in the Origin sect, he didn't even fear some of the hegemonic characters of the 8th heaven region. Why would he place the 4 major clans in his heart? In the distance there was a sound of moving through the air. What happened? Not good. Wen Tianyuan has been captured. Who is that person? Along with the voice, 5 figures whistled over. There were both men and women, and all of them possessed the aura of a Nirvana god. When they saw Wen Tianyuan, who was captured by Lin Sun, these old monsters were all surprised. In the 6th heaven, who dares to harm those who have set foot on the path of immortality? It's him, Lin Sun. An old man stared at Lin for a moment. He seemed to think of something and his face suddenly changed. Lin Sun. All of a sudden, the rest of the people present could not remain calm. Over the past few years, Lin Sun had undoubtedly become the most eye-catching peerless person in the entire eternal true world. There were too many legendary stories about him, and every one of them was a world-shaking event. This made many old monsters in the world feel ashamed of their inferiority. For the great immortal emperor clans of the 6th heaven, Lin Sun is an unforgettable name. Because they had regarded Lin Sun as a thorn in their side since a long time ago. They had formed an irreconcilable blood feud with Lin Sun in the Kiliakosm battlefield. Therefore, who wouldn't be shocked when they recognized Lin Sun? Just the title of the successor of the Yuan sect was enough to make them extremely fearful. Although they were afraid, they knew that Lin Sun and they were destined to be enemies, which could not be resolved at all. As a result, after seeing through Lin Sun's identity, they couldn't suppress the boiling killing intent in their hearts. Lin Sun, this is the 6th heaven, not the Yuan sect. I advise you to release Wen Tianyuan and leave quickly, otherwise, I'm afraid you won't be able to leave today. An old man in a black robe said coldly. He exchanged glances with the others. With the strength of a group of Nirvana gods, they were very confident that they could keep Lin Sun here. Bang! With a loud explosion, blood splattered everywhere. Wen Tianyuan, whose neck was grasped by Lin Sun, was directly crushed. His body exploded and blood splashed out. The black-robed old man and the others were shocked by this bloody scene, and their faces turned ugly. "Since I'm already here, why should I leave?" Lin Sun said calmly. "I think you are also searching for the Luo family under the order of the 4 East Royal clans. You already know the answer." At the mention of the 4 Donghuang clans, the 5 holiness of Nirvana realms present became much calmer. This made Lin Sun feel ridiculous. The 4 immortal emperor clans of the 7th heaven might be able to threaten many cultivators in the world, but how could they threaten him? Undoubtedly, for these big shots in the 6th heaven, the 4 great families of the Eastern Emperor are existences that they can only look up to. This was the problem of cognition. Lin Sun was not in the mood to explain to the opponent, and he didn't want to talk nonsense anymore. Whoosh! His figure flickered, and his 5 Taoist bodies appeared at the same time. Together with his true self, they charged forward. The battle broke out. The 5 holiness of Nirvana realm cultivators were still full of confidence, thinking that their realms were far superior to Lin Sun's. Moreover, they had the advantage of outnumbering Lin Sun, so they were confident that they could defeat Lin Sun. But as soon as the battle began, their expressions changed, and their fighting spirit wavered. After a while, bang bang bang, with a muffled sound, the 5 holiness of Nirvana realms were suppressed one by one, seriously injured and dying. Lin Sun put away his 5 Taoist bodies, walked forward calmly, and began to search their souls. Soon, he understood the ins and outs of the matter. As early as 6 years ago, many immortal emperor clans in the 6th heaven received an order from the 4 Donghuang clans, asking them to search for the whereabouts of the Luo clan in the 6th heaven. Over the years, these great forces of the 6th heaven sent out various forces to search the world. It was only recently that they found some clues, inferring that the Luo clan was very likely to be hiding in this Chaos Demon Sea. Therefore, these old monsters all went out to search. Who would have thought that before they could find the whereabouts of the Luo clan, they would meet Lin Sun? After understanding this, Lin Sun's eyes also became cold. He was sure that although the order to search for the Luo clan came from the 4 Donghuang clans, they must be acting on orders. The real mastermind behind this was most likely the Donghuang clan, and the purpose of doing so was nothing more than to threaten Lin Sun with the lives of the Luo clan. "I will settle accounts with you one by one in the future." Lin Sun waved his sleeve. Boom! The 5 Nirvana realm powerhouses who were suppressed instantly turned into ashes and disappeared without a trace. The Nirvana realm was divided into 3 stages: early, middle, and late. And these Nirvana realm existences that Lin Sun encountered this time, the strongest one was only at the middle Nirvana realm. Moreover, the power of the immortal laws they controlled was mostly within the scope of the 9th grade of the Earth rank. As a result, the combat power they possessed was completely different from those Nirvana realm existences who controlled the 9th grade of the Heaven rank immortal laws. In short, on the path of immortality, there were only 2 factors that affected one's combat power. One was the level of one's cultivation. The other was the level of the immortal laws they controlled. A Nirvana realm existence who controlled the Earth rank immortal laws was destined to be no match for an expert of the same realm who controlled the Heaven rank immortal laws. Lin Sun was completely different. His cultivation was only at the great perfection of the heavenly longevity realm, but he had the foundation of an immortal supreme that could be said to be heaven-defying. And the immortal laws he controlled were tempered from the Nirvana realm order, and even exceeded the scope of the 9th grade of the Heaven rank. Under such circumstances, it was not difficult for him to surpass a realm and suppress a group of Nirvana realm existences who controlled the Earth rank immortal laws. After sorting out the spoils of war, Lin Sun headed towards the depths of the Southern Sea Divine Island. When Lin Sun arrived at the entrance of the Mi Luo Grotto Heaven with familiarity, he could not help but feel refreshed. The Mi Luo Grotto Heaven was a force that Master Lu established when he was dormant in the Chaos Demon Sea. Its entrance was in front of a weapon shop. Back then, Lin Sun had to spend a lot of effort to find this place. And now, in Lin Sun's eyes, the entrance of the Mi Luo Grotto heaven was shrouded by an invisible restrictive power. It was extremely mysterious. Not to mention ordinary people, even those with the path of immortality, would not be able to detect it. Without a doubt, this restrictive formation was the work of Master Lu. And the fact that the restrictive formation was still present undoubtedly meant that the Luo clan was most likely hiding in it. After thinking for a while, Lin Sun walked straight forward and disappeared in the blink of an eye. The secret realm where the Mi Luo Grotto heaven was located was still as quiet as before. The sky was vast, the land was vast, and the scenery was picturesque. Who? As soon as Lin Sun's figure appeared, a thunderous shout rang out. Immediately after, Lu Boya's figure appeared out of thin air. When he saw the person who came, his pupils couldn't help but widen, and he said in pleasant surprise, "So it's you, boy. Long time no see, Mr. Lu. You look even better than before." Lin Sun cupped his hands with a smile. He was also very excited. "Elder Lu, could it be that the enemy has come? Sons of the Luo family, come with me." A wave of shouts resounded in the distance, and then numerous dazzling streaks of light whistled over. All of them were filled with murderous intent as they thought that enemies had arrived. But when they saw who it was, they were all stunned. "Patriarch, it's young Master Lin." An old servant excitedly slapped his thigh and shouted. "Nonsense, of course I know." Luo Xiao, the patriarch of the clan, who was also Lin Sun's grandfather, laughed at this moment, and his voice spread through the sky. Beside him were Luo Qingheng and a group of familiar faces, all of whom were beaming with joy. Lin Sun's arrival really surprised and delighted them. Lin Sun felt warm in his heart. Everyone was safe and sound, which made him feel completely relieved. That night, the Mi Luo paradise was abnormally bustling with noise and excitement, and a grand banquet was held. When she saw Luo Qing, when she saw Lin Wenjing, Luo Zhao's tears flowed uncontrollably, and she repeatedly lost her composure. After so many years, she was really too excited to see her most beloved daughter again. Lu Boya and Luo Qingheng were also overwhelmed with emotions, and each of them sighed with emotion. Lin Sun smiled as he looked at this scene, and his heart was also filled with joy and comfort. Being able to reunite his mother with his family had also resolved a knot in his heart. After staying in the Mi Luo paradise for 2 days, Lin Sun departed. He already knew that Master Lu had already made preparations. He had been laying down a forbidden formation and a way of retreat for the past few years. In order to prevent enemies from coming to the Mi Luo paradise, he had already laid down an inescapable net inside and outside the Mi Luo paradise. Even if a Nirvana realm expert came, they wouldn't be able to discover it. Moreover, Lu Boya told Lin Sun that if there was any danger, the Luo family could also use an ancient teleportation formation to retreat and instantly arrive at one of the 3 forbidden areas of Chaos Demon Sea, the Aurora Cave. Lu Boya had already inquired about a forbidden area in the Aurora Cave. As long as one hid in it, even a transcendent realm expert would find it extremely difficult to break in. Knowing this, Lin Sun felt more at ease when he left. However, he still left behind some treasures, such as the token given by Sky Origin Pavilion Master Yen Ji. It contained Yen Ji's will avatar, and could be used 3 times, once every month. Lin Sun had used it once before, which meant that this token could still be used twice. In addition, Lin Sun also left behind some Tao soldiers, divine materials, order power, and so on that he had collected over the years. By doing this, he only hoped that his parents, Lu Boya, uncle, and grandfather would have more means to protect themselves. Parting was always sad. His parents' solicitous exhortations and the elders' meticulous care made Lin Sun's heart filled with emotions. But he still had to leave in the end. He still had many things to do on the Great Path. However, Lin Sun didn't immediately seek revenge on the 6th Heaven's immortal emperor clans. It wasn't that he didn't want to, but he couldn't expose his identity. Otherwise, the shaman sect, Zen sect, the Eighth Heaven's 10 great immortal giants, and other behemoths would immediately launch a terrifying attack and deal him a fatal blow. Just like in the past, just because he wanted to go to the ruins of fortune, even Xian Failing was worried and personally escorted him. It was conceivable that once they knew that Lin Sun appeared in the sixth heaven, it would attract monstrous killing. But not taking revenge now didn't mean that he would forget. In the future, sooner or later, Lin Sun would completely settle the past hatred. Half a month later, Yuan Realm. There was a fluctuation of light rain in the transmission ancient formation, and a tall figure walked out. The successor who guarded the transmission ancient formation looked up and shouted excitedly, "It's Deputy Deacon Lin. Deputy Deacon Lin is back." Lin Sun looked up and saw that the other party was not the successor of one of the enemy forces, so he nodded with a smile and left. After leaving for more than 6 years, Lin Sun couldn't help but feel like a lifetime had passed since he returned. On this day, the 3 pavilions and the 9 peaks of Yuan sect were alarmed. Just because Lin Sun was back. P.S. Do you want to continue adding updates tonight? How about ensuring the monthly votes and helping the chosen ones to enter the top 20 of the monthly vote? Chapter 29:17. In Yuan sect, there were often descendants who went out to practice, but most of them didn't cause much noise when they returned to the sect. Lin Sun was different. In the past few years, because of Lin Sun's existence, too many things happened in Yuan sect. In the entrance examination, Lin Sun entered the 9th peak as the first place. After that, he became an inherited disciple, a disciple of Yuankong Pavilion, and a deputy deacon of Yuankong Pavilion in the shortest time. Every promotion broke the previous records of Yuan sect. If that was all, Lin Sun could only be regarded as an extremely brilliant descendant of Yuan sect. But in the last cultivation discussion of the 9 peaks, Lin Sun suppressed the geniuses of witchcraft, Zen sect, and the 10 immortal giants one after another, leading the way and winning a rare honor for Yuan sect. After this, Lin Sun's prestige had been deeply rooted in the hearts of Yuan sect. Even some big shots who maintained a neutral attitude praised him and treated him with special respect. It could be said that these past deeds had made Lin Sun's position in Yuan sect extremely special, and he was deeply supported by most descendants. Therefore, after 6 years, the news of Lin Sun's return caused a sensation in Yuan sect. This was the influence. By the time Lin Sun returned to his blessed place, many people had come to visit him. Mo Lanshan, the elder of the 9th peak, Li Chunjun, Huang Muji, and so on, Feng Qishi, Drifting Cloud Feng, Xiang Xiayuan, and so on. For a moment, Lin Sun's place was very lively. However, those who came to visit didn't stay for long. They probably knew that many people wanted to see Lin Sun today, so it was not appropriate to stay for a long time. It wasn't until dusk that Lin Sun finally had some free time. With a long sigh of relief, Lin Sun lay on the soft couch, took out the wine gourd, and drank it. He was completely relaxed. In Yuan sect, he really didn't have to worry about any danger. Although there were many twists and turns in this trip to the ruins of fate, he successfully achieved his goal. His parents had settled down in the Luo clan, and Xia Ji was now by his side. He didn't have to worry about whether she would leave him in the future. In addition, the experience in the ruins of fate also benefited Lin Sun a lot. First of all, mastering the cultivation system of the last 100 eras would bring him immeasurable benefits for his future cultivation. As Chun Linkong said, only by thoroughly understanding the cultivation system of the last 100 eras could he clearly know how powerful the peak realm of each era was. From this, it could be inferred how powerful the culprit behind the scenes was to be able to cause the civilizations of those eras to suffer such a calamity. It could be inferred that how powerful the people behind the scenes were to cause the destruction of these eras. To put it simply, if he absorbed the strengths of the various eras, he would definitely be able to rise above them in the future. Besides that, he was already the master of Divine Creation City, so when he attained eternity in the future and encountered the Grand Silence lifespan tribulation, he could choose to head to Divine Creation City to comprehend the quintessence of creation and resolve this tribulation. Chun Linkong had also said that the next time he returned, he might be able to take the river diagram with him. Ti Chun sect and the sect Sun's clan, he would sect the river Sun of sect. A few years ago, Lin Sun already had the foundation to prove his Tao in the Nirvana God realm. The reason why he didn't prove his Tao in the Fortune Divine City was because he was suppressed by the power of laws in the city. When he became the sect's lord, the situation had changed. There was no time for him to enter the Nirvana realm. It's not too late to enter the Nirvana realm after I get the position of deacon. Lin Sun thought for a moment and made a decision. To become a deacon, he must first have the cultivation of the late stage of heavenly longevity realm, and then complete a task assigned by the vice pavilion master of Yuan Qing Pavilion. Finally, he could challenge one of the 12 deacons of Yuan Kong Pavilion and replace him. Lin Sun didn't intend to wait any longer and decided to do it tomorrow. At night, Deacon Tao Lung came to visit. I came here to visit you and ask about your experience in the ruins of fate, and then report it to Vice Pavilion Master Xian Fei Ling. Tao Ling went straight to the point. You don't know how much Vice Pavilion Master Xian Fei Ling worried about your safety during the 6 years you were away. He was afraid that you would be intercepted by those enemies on your way back. Lin Sun felt warm in his heart and said, Well, I'll go with you to visit Vice Pavilion Master Xian. Tao Ling shook his head quickly. Don't go now. Vice Pavilion Master Xian is in a bad situation now. Lin Sun raised his eyebrows. What happened? Tao Ling looked serious. In the 2nd year after you left, people from the 9th Heaven region came. Lin Sun narrowed his eyes. Eternal God Clan? Yes, 2 clansmen of the Eternal God Clan came this time. Tao Ling said, His name is Yuan Shilio. He's in the Transcendent Realm Great Perfection. When he came to our Yuan school, he held a decree from the leader. The decree said that he would be appointed as a guest elder. Lin Sun frowned. I remember that our sect has never set up such a position. Tao Ling explained, Of course, but the decree Yuan Shilio held was written by the hierarch himself. It can't be falsified. After the negotiation of the big shots of the sect, a new position of guest elder was added, which is equivalent to the vice pavilion master, but it doesn't have real power. Lin Sun secretly breathed a sigh of relief and said, As long as he doesn't have real power, it's nothing more than a decoration. Tao Ling shook his head. That's not necessarily true. Yuan Shilio comes from the 9th Heaven and is from the Eternal God Clan. Even our Yuan sect has to be courteous to such a noble character. If he wants to intervene in something, under normal circumstances, no one will refuse. Lin Sun pondered, Who is the second person? Tao Ling said, Yuan Changtian, the 9th son of the Eternal God Clan's patriarch. He is a natural God's son. His talent is terrifying, and his foundation is abnormal. He has the cultivation of Nirvana Realm Intermediate. As soon as he arrived in Yuan sect, he caused a great sensation. There was also a look of amazement on his face. However, to Tao Ling's surprise, Lin Sun's expression didn't change, as if he didn't care at all. Lin Sun didn't explain. He couldn't tell Tao Ling that as early as in the ruins of fate, the number of God's sons who died in his hands had already exceeded 100, right? Those God's sons have the backing of various major God clans, and those God clans also have eternal realm experts. In terms of foundation, they are not necessarily inferior to the eternal God clan of the 9th Heaven. If it weren't for this experience, Lin Sun might also be surprised by the arrival of Yuan Changtian. After all, he is a God's son from the 9th Heaven. But after the experience in the ruins of fate, Lin Sun really couldn't be surprised. This is the change of vision, the change of mentality. Tao Ling lowered his voice and said, don't underestimate this person. According to Deputy Pavilion Master Xian Feiling, Yuan Shiliu's real purpose in coming here is to act as Yuan Changtian's protector. And Yuan Changtian's purpose is very likely the same as yours, to seize the position of Yuan Qing Pavilion Master. Hearing this, Lin Sun showed a serious expression, raising his eyebrows. He is a god's son of the ninth heaven. He also plans to get involved? Brother, don't underestimate the position of Pavilion Master. Anyone who can become a Pavilion Master has the foundation and strength to step into the eternal realm. After becoming a Pavilion Master, even if they go to the ninth heaven, they can be on an equal footing with the great figures of the Eternal God clan. Tao Lung seemed to know a lot of secrets and pointed out to Lin Sun. I don't know what the ninth heaven looks like, after all, I have never been there. But as an old man who entered the sect tens of thousands of years earlier than you, I have heard a lot of news related to the ninth heaven over the years. What news? Lin Sun asked with interest. Tao Lung sneered. This is a long story. You only need to know that the position of the Pavilion Master of our Yuan sect is also very popular in the ninth heaven. So, the purpose of Yuan Shiliu and Yuan Changtian coming here is to obtain the position of Yuan Qing Pavilion Master. Lin Sun pondered. This is exactly what I came here to tell you, Tao Lung said. Although Yuan Changtian's talent is heaven-defying, he is not domineering at all. On the contrary, he gives people a sense of modesty and peace like a spring breeze. He treats others flawlessly. Moreover, every single action of his follows the rules, and no one can find any fault with him. Now, he has already passed through the various tests with his own ability, and has become one of the 9 elders of our Sky Origin Pavilion. Elder? Lin Sun was surprised. Yes, an elder in the Nirvana God Realm Intermediate. Tao Lung said seriously. This is indeed amazing. Within the Yuan religion's 3 pavilions, even the weakest among them had to possess the cultivation of a Nirvana God at least. However, there were only 9 elders in each pavilion. As a result, after countless years, those who held the position of an elder mostly possessed the cultivation of a transcendent realm. They have at least the cultivation base of Nirvana God Realm perfection. This kind of situation could be seen everywhere among the elders of the 3 pavilions. Yuan Changtian was able to win the position of an elder in the Nirvana God Realm Intermediate, which undoubtedly proves that his combat power is extremely heaven-defying. Who replaced him as an elder? Lin Sun asked thoughtfully. It's Elder Niechinghu, a Nirvana God Realm perfection expert. He has been an elder for more than 13,000 years. Elder Niechinghu is also one of the right-hand men of Xian Feiling. When Tao Lung spoke up to hear, a trace of gloominess appeared between his brows. Lin Sun said thoughtfully, Did Yuan Changtian deliberately choose Elder Niechinghu as his opponent? Or does he have an unusual relationship with the top 10 immortal forces? Tao Lung glanced at Lin Sun in surprise and said, Brother, your eyes are really sharp. You can see the problem at a glance. He continued, You're right. Ever since Yuan Changtian joined the Yuan sect, Fu Wenli, Qi Shaoyun, and the other immortal leaders of the 10 great immortal realm experts were overjoyed. They didn't even try to hide their goodwill toward Yuan Changtian. According to Xian Feiling's deduction, Yuan clan of Eternal God clan has already contacted the immortal forces behind Fu Wenli, Qi Shaoyun and other big shots in order to help Yuan Changtian get the position of Yuan Qing Pavilion Master. Hearing this, Lin Sun completely understood. He couldn't help but sneer, dragging the divine son of Eternal God clan into this. What a good plan. P.S. Thank you for your tips and monthly tickets, I'll give you more updates. Chapter 29:18. Lin Sun couldn't help but wonder. He asked, There are only about 90 years left before Pavilion Head Yu Beihai attains the Eternal Realm. Is Yuan Changtian so confident that he can attain the Transcendent Realm and fight for the position of Yuan Qing Pavilion Head? If one wanted to fight for the position of pavilion head, he must first become a deputy pavilion head. Among the 9 deputy pavilion heads of Yuan sect, which of them was not a terrifying existence in the transcendent realm great perfection? Moreover, Yuan Changtian was only in the middle stage of nirvana realm. Tao Ling said, Yuan Changtian must be well prepared if he dares to come here. Besides, there are still 90 years left. Speaking of this, he looked at Lin Sun with a strange expression. What's more, compared to Yuan Changtian, it will be more difficult for you to win the position of Yuan Qing pavilion head. Lin Sun was in the heavenly longevity realm great perfection. In terms of cultivation alone, he was much weaker than Yuan Changtian. Well, that's true. Lin Sun laughed. Of course, I also know that you have the foundation of Immortal Supreme, which is completely different from others. If you really want to compete, you are not necessarily inferior to Yuan Changtian. Tao Ling seemed to be worried that Lin Sun would be hurt, so he comforted. According to Deputy Pavilion Head Xian Failing, he hopes that you can concentrate on cultivation after returning to Yuan sect and improve your strength as soon as possible. Whether it is him or some other big shots in Yuan sect, they are not willing to give Yuan Changtian the opportunity to ascend to the throne of Pavilion Head. Lin Sun nodded. Suddenly, the power of the restriction in the cave residence rippled. Lin Sun opened the restriction, and suddenly a clear and peaceful voice came. Is Taoist brother Lin Sun here? Tao Ling's pupils suddenly shrank, and he seemed to be extremely surprised. He immediately transmitted a voice message. It's Yuan Changtian. I didn't expect him to come to you. Yuan Changtian? Lin Sun was stunned. This was the first day he returned, and the Divine Son, from the 9th Heaven Divine clan took the initiative to come to him. What was he going to do? I'll go and have a look. While thinking, Lin Sun got up and walked out of the cave residence. Outside the cave residence stood a tall man in white. His long black hair was loose, his face was fair and delicate, and his eyes were as clear as stars. He was clean and unadorned, with only a round and translucent cyan jade hanging on his waist. He was extraordinarily handsome, as clear as jade. Upon seeing Lin Sun, he smiled and cupped one hand in the other before his chest. I'm Yuan Changtian, an elder of Yuan Kong Pavilion. I've come to pay a visit to you. I don't deserve to be called a fellow practitioner. Elder Yuan can just call me Lin Sun. Lin Sun said casually. I've long heard of Brother Lin's great name. Now that I've met you, you really do live up to your reputation. Yuan Changtian smiled warmly. I'm sorry that I came here so abruptly. Lin Sun also smiled and said, Since we are both members of the Yuan sect, there is no need to be rude. I heard that Elder Yuan is from the 9th heaven and has a noble background. I think you will definitely shine in the sect in the future. Yuan Changtian smiled bitterly and sighed. Being born in the god race isn't necessarily something to be envious of. If it weren't for the fact that I couldn't stay in the 9th heaven, I wouldn't have come to the Yuan sect. Lin Sun raised his eyebrows. It seems that Elder Yuan has other difficulties? Yuan Changtian smiled and said, Who in this world doesn't have difficulties behind their backs? I'm here to meet you, Brother Lin, and also to talk to you about something. Elder Yuan, please speak frankly. Lin Sun said. Yuan Changtian stopped smiling and said thoughtfully, When I came to the Yuan sect, I had already heard some of Brother Lin's deeds. I also know that Brother Lin seems to be determined to win the position of Yuan Qing Pavilion Master. But I have an important task for the sect, but I have to fight for the position of Pavilion Master. Brother Lin, what do you think I should do? Lin Sun laughed. If I advise you to give up, will you listen? Yuan Changtian was stunned for a moment and then he smiled bitterly. Brother Lin, if I could give up, I would have given up long ago. Then fight for it. Lin Sun said casually. Yuan Changtian sighed softly, but I don't want to become enemies with Brother Lin. One more friend is better than one more enemy. That's why I took the liberty to come here and talk to you about this matter. Lin Sun smiled. You don't want me to give up, do you? Unexpectedly, Yuan Changtian said seriously, Brother Lin, if you are willing to take a step back, I can promise you that I will repay you generously in the future. For example, I can help Brother Lin resolve the hatred between you and the immortal giants. I can also help Brother Lin go to the ninth heaven for cultivation. If Brother Lin is willing, I can even recommend Brother Lin to my Minamoto clan for cultivation. With Brother Lin's foundation and strength, you will definitely be valued. Finally, Yuan Changtian solemnly added, Of course, as long as I can do it, I will promise you everything. Lin Sun asked, Really? Yuan Changtian smiled and said, A monarch never goes back on his words. I only have one request, Lin Sun said. Yuan Changtian's spirit was lifted. Brother Lin, please go ahead. Lin Sun said, Elder Yuan, you'd better stop thinking about the position of Yuan Qing Pavilion Master. It doesn't belong to you. After saying that, Lin Sun turned around and walked into the cave residence, leaving Yuan Changtian alone. Yuan Changtian was silent for a moment, but he didn't look angry at all. Instead, he cupped his hands towards Lin Sun's cave residence and said, I understand Brother Lin's mind. Goodbye. He turned around and left. In the cave residence, Taoling asked immediately, What is Yuan Changtian doing here? Lin Sun casually told him what had happened just now. Taoling couldn't help laughing angrily. What does he think the position of Yuan Qing Pavilion Master is? A commodity that can be exchanged? Lin Sun said casually, In my opinion, with his character, it seems that he is here to negotiate terms on the surface, but in fact, he is just testing me with this matter. Testing? Yes, to test whether I am determined to win the position of Yuan Qing Pavilion Master. Taoling was surprised, so, he regards you as his number one enemy. Lin Sun joked, Should I feel honored? Taoling was amused and said, However, you really can't be careless. The more humble and shrewd a guy is, the more difficult it is to deal with him. In order to help him ascend to the position of Yuan Qing Pavilion Master, I'm afraid those big shots in the sect who hate you will not be indifferent in the next period of time. Lin Sun nodded. After talking for a while, Taoling left in a hurry. Lin Sun began to meditate. In the night, in the cave world where Fu Wenli, the deputy pavilion master, lived. Fu Wenli, Qi Xiaoyun, Qi Wen, Dong Wangqing, Tang Qiu and other big shots gathered. Lin Sun has returned. According to our previous agreement, we should fully support Yuan Changtian to ascend to the position in any case. Fu Wenli spoke indifferently. This also means that everyone should sharpen their eyes in the following years. We must fiercely suppress this kid, and if there's a chance to beat him down, then we absolutely can't miss it. Everyone nodded in agreement. However, if he concentrates on cultivation and ignores the affairs of the world, we can't do anything to him. Tang Qiu, who was as thin as firewood, frowned. If there is no chance, create one. Fu Wenli said expressionlessly, as long as he wants to seek promotion, he must face all kinds of tests. In these tests he can always find a chance. After a pause, he continued to say, Moreover, the immortal Tao battle initiated by the witchcraft sect's ancestral court will begin in the 10-direction devil territory in another 10 years. At that time, it might be the best time to defeat this brat. Immortal Tao battle. The big shots present were stunned at first, and then their eyes lit up. Every 3,000 years, the ancestral court of witchcraft would launch an immortal Tao battle. At that time, the 4 ancestral courts would each select 5 successors who set foot on the immortal road to participate in the battle. The location of the immortal Tao battle was located in the 10 devil territory. It was a strange and ominous place of great danger, and numerous unimaginable dangers were hidden there. This is a good idea. If Lin Sun suffers in the 10 devil territory, he can't blame anyone. Qi Xiaoyun laughed. Qi Wen also laughed. The ancestral court of witchcraft regards Mind Mountain as its enemy and hates the descendants of Mind Mountain the most. If Lin Sun participates in the battle, I'm afraid that the ancestral court of witchcraft will not miss the opportunity to attack him without any arrangements. It's too early to say this. After all, there are still 10 years. During this period, I'll have to trouble you, Fu Wenli said in a deep voice. Everyone readily agreed. Young master has seen Lin Sun? In the same night, in Yuan Changtian's cave residence, when seeing Yuan Changtian return, Yuan Shiliu, who had been waiting there, stood up to greet him. Yuan Shilu was like an old man with one foot in the grave. His beard and hair were sparse, his eyes turbid, and the wrinkles on his skinny face were like ravines. But he was of veritable transcendent realm great perfection. Moreover, he came from the 9th Heaven Divine clan, and the power he possessed was far beyond ordinary. However, such a big shot seemed very respectful in front of Yuan Changtian, like a servant. Uncle Shiliu, I've already said that in Yuan school, don't treat me like you treat me in the clan. From now on, you can just call me Changtian. Yuan Changtian said warmly. No, young master is the 9th son of the patriarch. Since you've arranged for this old servant to stay by your side, how can there be no rules? Yuan Shiliu shook his head. His surname was Yuan, but he called himself an old servant. Yuan Changtian sighed softly and said, Well, it's up to you. Yuan Shiliu smiled and invited Yuan Changtian to take a seat. Then, he said, Young master, you haven't answered this old servant's question yet. Yuan Changtian said, I've seen him before. He looks peaceful on the outside, but he's very proud and opinionated. I'm afraid there's not much hope for him to give up the position of Yuan Qing Pavilion Master. After hearing this, Yuan Shiliu showed a kind smile and said, Young master, don't worry. I'm afraid he won't live until then. Yuan Changtian was startled and frowned. Uncle Shiliu, this is Yuan school. Don't mess around. Yuan Shiliu nodded with a smile and said, If it's not necessary, this old servant won't make such a bad move. Young master, don't worry. I've already informed Fu Wenli and others. They have promised to fully assist you in the next few years and fight for the position of pavilion master for you. Yuan Changtian smiled disapprovingly and said, These are not important. On the way to fighting for the position of pavilion master, without Lin Sun, there are still some old guys. I won't pin all my hopes on others. In the end, there was a faint arrogance in the depths of his calm eyes. P.S. The second update will be done soon. Chapter 29-19. The next morning. Yuan Qing Pavilion. Deputy Deacon Lin is going to take the assessment for promotion to the position of deacon? When he learned the purpose of Lin's visit, a disciple of Yuan Qing Pavilion who was receiving Lin was stunned. Yes, you can invite Deputy Head Fong Daoping here, Lin said. Deputy Deacon Lin, please wait a moment. The disciple left in a hurry. Before long, Fong Daoping appeared and said with a strange look, You just came back yesterday. Are you going to take the assessment today? Lin said with a smile, Senior, is there anything wrong? Fong Daoping said, No. You have reached the peak of Heaven Longevity Realm, so you are naturally qualified to seek the position of deacon. He paused for a moment and continued. After the Tao discussion ended, I've already discussed it with the other Vice Pavilion Masters. We can cancel the completion of a sect assignment for your deacon test. This also means that what you have to face now is a challenge. Lin was stunned. The sect task is cancelled? Fong Daoping said with a smile, Last time you contributed to the sect in the 9 Peaks discussion and suppressed the successors of Witch Cult and Zen Cult. This contribution is far more than a sect task. Then won't the others gossip? Lin was a little worried. Don't worry. No matter how much they hate you, they can't interfere in this matter. Fong Daoping said and asked, Who are you going to challenge? There were 12 deacons in Yuan Kong Pavilion. If Lin wanted to become a deacon, he had to defeat one of them and take his place. Mu Qin. Lin said a name. Fong Daoping's eyes narrowed slightly. He is at the early stage of Nirvana realm, and now his cultivation has shown signs of breaking through to the middle stage. Among the 12 deacons of Yuan Kong Pavilion, his combat power is already in the top 5. And you? In his view, Lin Sun was only at the peak of Heaven Longevity Realm, which was a big realm lower than Mu Qin. It was obviously too risky to do so. It's him. Lin Sun looked calm. Before coming here, he had thought about it carefully. It was not that he had to choose Mu Qin, but only a few of the 12 deacons were strong in the enemy forces. Mu Qin came from the Mu clan in the 8th heaven. For Lin Sun, he was undoubtedly a good candidate. All right, I'll send someone to inform Mu Qin. Fong Daoping stopped trying to persuade him and started to take action. Only half a quarter of an hour later, a Yuanqing Pavilion disciple came to report. Deacon Mu Qin is in seclusion and cannot accept the challenge at this time. Fong Daoping raised his brows and sneered. I remember that he just came out of closed-door cultivation a while ago. Why is he in closed-door cultivation again? How could he not know that Mu Qin's action was very likely to avoid battle? But there was nothing Fong Daoping could do. He couldn't force Mu Qin out of seclusion. Since Deacon Mu Qin is in seclusion, let's get someone else. Lin was a little surprised, but he didn't care. It was not Lin Sun's face that the enemy avoided the battle. Who? Fong Daoping asked. Dong Wang Wu. Upon hearing this name, Fong Daoping nodded and said, sure. Among the 12 deacons of the Sky Origin Pavilion, Dong Wang Wu was at the early stage of the Nirvana God realm. In terms of battle strength, he was even weaker than Mu Qin. Fong Daoping immediately sent a disciple to Dong Wang Wu's blessed abode. However, not long after, there was news. Dong Wang Wu was refining Taoist soldiers and couldn't go out for a while. This made Fong Daoping's face sink. Could it be that these guys have colluded with each other to do this on purpose? Don't they feel ashamed? Lin Sun didn't care much and said with a smile, they have important things to do. Even if they don't accept the challenge, it won't affect them much. However, if I want to know whether they have colluded or not, I can continue to try. Who's next? Fong Daoping asked. Lulingyi. Lin Sun said a name. Fong Daoping's pupils shrank. This person has the cultivation of the middle stage of the Nirvana God realm. He is more difficult to deal with than Mu Qin. Senior, don't worry, Lin Sun said. Fong Daoping thought for a moment and agreed. Not long after, a disciple of the Sky Origin Pavilion returned and said in a low voice, Deputy Pavilion Head Fong, Deacon Lulingyi is writing scriptures and has consumed too much of his mind. However, he didn't refuse the challenge. He just needs to wait for a year to recover his mind. Fong Daoping frowned. He has the cultivation of the middle stage of the Nirvana God realm, but he avoids the challenge. What a scandal! He had realized that these guys must have colluded long ago. Even if their cultivation was higher than Lin Sun's, they didn't intend to give Lin Sun a chance to challenge them. In this way, Lin Sun couldn't step on them. Lin Sun's black eyes were cold, and he said indifferently, Senior, let's continue to change people. If there is no one from the Sky Origin Pavilion to accept the challenge, let's change the deacons of the Yuanshu Pavilion and the Yuanqing Pavilion. In the end, I will let the whole Yuan Church see whether these guys who collude with each other are shameless or not. Fong Daoping's eyes flashed, and he said, Among them, there are people in the peak of the Nirvana God realm. Are you sure you want to try? Lin Sun said, Senior, if I fight with the Blade of Time, can I cut down the opponent's cultivation in one fell swoop? Fong Daoping's expression became strange. You can do it if you take them by surprise. But now everyone in the Yuan Church knows that you have defeated Yu Fengzi of the Zen Church with the Blade of Time. It's hard to guarantee that they won't be on guard. It doesn't matter. As long as I can deal with them. Lin Sun thought in his heart that if they could guard against the Blade of Time, could they guard against the Gate of Exile? He had never revealed this forbidden divine ability before. No, it's too rash. It's better to choose some safe opponents to test first. If no one really accepts the challenge in the end, then we can make a decision. Fong Daoping pondered. Lin Sun nodded in agreement. Immediately, Fong Daoping ordered the disciples of the Yuanqing Pavilion to deliver the message. And in the following time, the news came back one after another. Deacon Yun Poyu is in closed-door training and can't accept the challenge. Deacon Gu Ling is refining a furnace of elixirs and has no time to be distracted. Deacon Qi Qianqiu, every challenge was rejected without exception. The reason was the same and nothing new. In the end, all the deacons of the Sky Origin Pavilion, the Yuanshu Pavilion, and the Yuanqing Pavilion refused to accept the challenge, except those who had reached the peak of the Nirvana God realm. Fong Daoping's face was completely gloomy. Although he knew that the other side had colluded, he still couldn't help but be angry when he saw such a scene. Lin Sun said thoughtfully, "It seems that they intend to use all kinds of methods to prevent me from rising, so as to win more opportunities for Yuan Changtian. Lin Sun, in my opinion, this may be a conspiracy." Fong Daoping seemed to have realized something, and he said, "Presently, most of those who are avoiding battle are at the intermediate stage of the Nirvana God realm. In the 3 pavilions, there are a few experts at the perfection stage of the Nirvana God realm amongst your enemies. I suspect that if you were to issue a challenge to them now, they would definitely agree at the first possible moment." After a pause, he said coldly, "In this way, they will have enough confidence to defeat you. Even if you use the talent power of the Blade of Time, I'm afraid they have already been on guard, and have a way to avoid it. If you fight head-on, how can you be a match for someone at the peak of the Nirvana God realm?" Lin Sun also realized this, but he was not worried. If the Blade of Time didn't work, he still had the Gate of Exile. And the 5 Tao forms, however, when he intended to do so, he was refused by Fong Daoping. "It's too risky. It's not worth it at all," Fong Daoping said. "If you want to be a deacon, you can also choose to be a deacon other than your enemies." Lin Sun smiled bitterly. "In this case, how can I defeat them? It's impossible for me to kill them in this kind of challenge. Why should I be so stubborn?" Fong Daoping asked. Lin Sun was silent for a moment and sighed softly. Well, he didn't want to expose all his trump cards in such a challenge. It was indeed not worth it, and it was easy for his opponent to see through him. "Senior, according to the rules of the sect, if all the challengers avoid the challenge, what should we do?" Lin Sun couldn't help asking. Fong Daoping said, "It's very simple. The time limit is 1 month. If no one accepts the challenge within a month, the challenger can take the place of anyone." Lin Sun nodded. Immediately, he thought of one thing. How did Yuan Changtian become an elder? Fong Dao casually said, "Yuan Changtian's cultivation is at the mid-nirvana god stage. His foundation is heaven-defying, and his talent is shocking. When he defeated Elder Niechinghu, who is at the perfect nirvana god stage, he revealed an extremely shocking strength. In the end, there is only a small gap between him and Elder Niechinghu." Lin Sun suddenly understood. If he was at the middle stage of Nirvana realm, it wouldn't be difficult for him to defeat such an opponent. "Then do you want to challenge other deacons?" Fong Daoping asked. Lin Sun shook his head. "I'm only interested in the positions occupied by those enemies." Speaking of this, he thought of something and said, "Senior, give me 1 month. I'll come back to challenge them then." 1 month? Fong Daoping was a little confused. "You'll know when the time comes." Lin Sun smiled slightly. On the same day, the news about Lin Sun's participation in the deacon assessment spread throughout the Yuan sect, causing a great sensation. Among the 3 pavilions, no one who was challenged by Deputy Deacon Lin dared to accept the challenge. Isn't it too cowardly? It's not cowardly. It's because they don't want to give Deputy Deacon Lin a chance at all. These deacons who refused to accept the challenge obviously colluded with each other, and did it on purpose. That's the most despicable thing. In order to prevent Deputy Deacon Lin from being promoted, these old guys colluded with each other. Their means are a little despicable. Alas, since the arrival of the divine son Yuan Changtian, the situation in our Yuan sect has become delicate. Everyone in the Yuan sect was talking about it. When they heard the news, big shots like Xian Feiling and Du Guyong all frowned. How could they not know that this was the arrangement of Fu Wenli and the other old guys? As for Fu Wenli and the others, they couldn't help but laugh after hearing the news. They were in a good mood. Since Lin Sun entered the Yuan sect, it was the first time that they had seen Lin Sun suffer such a setback. The only pity was that Lin Sun didn't challenge the peak of Nirvana realm in their camp. Otherwise, there would be a bigger show to watch. He just came back yesterday, but today he's seeking the position of deacon. Is he stimulated by my arrival? Yuan Changtian couldn't help but feel surprised when he heard the news, and then he laughed. The more anxious Lin Sun was, the more it proved that Yuan Changtian had become the biggest threat in his mind, which made him feel pressured. Under such circumstances, it was easy for Yuan Changtian to lose his composure. Lin Sun, I thought you were a worthy opponent, but your performance today let me down a little, Yuan Changtian sighed in his heart. P.S. Do you still have monthly tickets? If you want to continue tonight. Chapter 29-20. After returning to the cave residence, Lin Sun began to meditate in seclusion. As early as a few years ago, he already had the foundation and opportunity to break through the realm. Now, he could step into this threshold at any time. After returning yesterday, the reason why he decided to seek the position of deacon today was that he wanted to cultivate in seclusion for a long time after becoming a deacon. When he came out, he would directly seek the position of an elder. But now Lin Sun changed his mind. Whoosh, taking a deep breath, Lin Sun began to operate his qi. Suddenly, the light of Tao rose from his body and flowed with divine brilliance, reflecting all kinds of unimaginable phenomena of the Great Way. Waves of Tao sounds came out of his body like Sanskrit chanting. For a moment, he was like a god sitting in a sacred place, deriving the mysteries of the Great Way. The Nirvana realm allowed one's soul, will, and dharma to achieve an extreme transformation, thereby leading to a change in one's own cultivation. In the heavenly longevity realm, one could only comprehend the power of order and condense their own immortal laws. But in the Nirvana realm, one could directly refine the power of order into a part of one's own immortal laws. For example, the heavenly longevity realm could only comprehend the mystery of the power of order and condense the immortal laws with their own great way. But for the Nirvana realm, they could directly refine the power of order and integrate it into their own immortal laws. This was the horror of the Nirvana realm. Especially in battle, it was almost difficult for some heavenly longevity realm practitioners to suppress the Nirvana realm even if they borrowed the power of order. The reason was that the immortal laws of the Nirvana realm practitioners were originally integrated with the power of order, so they were naturally unafraid of such suppression. Moreover, the higher the level of the power of order refined by the Nirvana realm practitioners, the more terrifying the power released in battle would be. This was essentially different from the immortal laws of the heavenly longevity realm practitioners. Boom boom soon, Lin Sun's body was like a furnace of the Great Way, resounding with Tao sounds. The Tao light and divine brilliance all over his body seemed to be boiling, faintly about to burst out. If it weren't for the fact that the blessed enclave was covered with the power of order of the Yuan sect and was covered with layers of restrictions, such a movement would probably cause a vast phenomenon of heaven and earth. A few days later, Lin Sun, who was meditating, had a thought. A crystal-clear pill like a small sun swept out and was swallowed by him. Nirvana Myriad Transformation Pill. It was refined from a rare 9th-grade heaven-rank medicine spirit order, and it could only be refined once every 10,000 years. Consuming this pill was sufficient to increase one's chances of breaking through to the rebirth god realm by 50%. Moreover, it possessed an unbelievable effect towards tempering one's cultivation in the rebirth god realm. If one wanted to obtain this pill, they would need the agreement of all 3 pavilion masters. Otherwise, it would be extremely difficult to obtain such a treasure, no matter how many contributions one made. This Nirvana elixir was Lin's reward after the 9 Peaks discussion. He naturally didn't care about the effects of this pill when he broke through, but he cared about the miraculous effects of this pill in refining the Nirvana God Realm Tao Foundation. Boom! As soon as he swallowed the elixir, Lin soon felt that his soul, state of mind and body were all burning with raging fire. He felt that he was being refined in a furnace. He held his breath and concentrated on refining with all his might. For a time, the cave was full of treasure light and roaring divine light. Lin Sun's figure was submerged in it. Until 7 days later. Boom! There was a sudden loud noise in the cave where Lin Sun was, just like the beginning of chaos. The boiling power of the great way raged and spread, shaking the restriction power in the cave violently. This movement lasted for a full quarter of an hour. Then, in the place where Lin Sun sat cross-legged and meditated, an obscure and deep abyssal whirlpool appeared. When it rotated slowly, the divine light and Taoist light that were like stormy waves were swallowed up like clay oxen falling into the sea, leaving nothing behind. And Lin Sun's tall figure also appeared. In the place behind him, the immortal divine ring emerged, which was round and wonderful. In the center of the divine ring, there was a mighty Dharma form of willpower sitting in it. It swallowed clouds and breathed in the wind and thunder, the sun, the moon, the stars, the mountains and rivers, and all the things in the world. All the manifestations in the world were lingering around the Dharma form of willpower, looming. In a trance, the immortal divine ring was like a universe, and the Dharma form of willpower was the only supreme master in it. Peerlessly surging energy of the Grand Tao surged on Lin Sun's body, and it carried a mysterious and profound rhythm. His skin that seemed as if it was made from divine gold and divine jade was suffused with a crystalline and translucent glow. His skin, tendons, bones, and blood emanated terrifying fluctuations of vitality, and even his hair was suffused with a divine glow. And inside his body, it was like a Zhou Su world full of chaos. The torrent of the Great Way was roaring like the Yangtze River, scouring the meridians, acupoints, viscera, and the mysterious track was just like the rule power of a Zhou Su world operating and evolving. Compared with the changes of Taoist body and cultivation, the transformation of the Dharma form of willpower in the sea of consciousness was even more amazing. In his sea of consciousness, which was originally extremely vast and empty, there were billions of divine lights circulating, bright and bright. A Dharma form that looked like a cauldron was suppressing it, vaguely showing an eternal and indestructible might. The surging power of the divine soul around the Dharma form of willpower evolved into all kinds of great way laws, which crisscrossed like divine chains, extremely spectacular. This was the Nirvana realm. The immortal divine ring and Dharma form were born, and the will of the sea of consciousness was naturally formed. The immortal divine ring of heavenly longevity realm did not have the Dharma form of willpower, and the divine soul Dharma form in the sea of consciousness could not manifest the power of the Great Way. Nirvana realm, feeling the earth-shaking transformation of his cultivation, Lin Sun was neither sad nor happy. He was extremely calm. There were no twists and turns, no accidents. Everything came naturally, so he was naturally not too excited. Originally, all of this could have happened a few years ago. But now it was not too late. It didn't take long for Lin Sun to abandon these thoughts and sink into meditation again. He began to familiarize himself with and consolidate the power of the new realm. 1 month later, early in the morning, Zhong Lizhe, who was meditating in the cave residence, suddenly opened his eyes. He opened the restriction of the cave residence, and suddenly heard a voice. Deputy Deacon Lin Sun has issued a challenge to you in Yuanqing Pavilion. If you accept the challenge, Deputy Pavilion Head Fang Daoping invites you to Yuanqing Pavilion now. Zhongli Zhe was stunned. Lin Sun still didn't give up? Come back in an hour, Zhongli Zhe said after thinking for a while. Yes. The disciple outside the cave residence took the order and left. Zhongli Zhe got up and left the cave residence. Not long after, in the blessed place where Fu Wenli was, Zhongli Zhe told Fu Wenli about Lin Sun's challenge. Fu Wenli was also startled. This kid actually has such guts? Zhongli Zhe said, it's obvious that he's not resigned to his previous defeat. Fu Wenli thought for a moment and laughed. I'm not worried that you will lose. Instead, I'm worried that if the news spreads out, it will be bad for your reputation. After all, you are the first deacon of Yuan Sky Pavilion and have the cultivation of the Nirvana realm. If you fight, it is likely that people will suspect that you deliberately bullied Lin Sun. Zhongli Zhe also laughed and said, since he wants to be beaten up, I don't mind fulfilling his wish. Fu Wenli pondered and said, he is not a rash person. Since he dares to challenge, he must have a certain degree of confidence. If you accept the challenge, you should be careful of his talent, the Blade of Time. Once you are hit, your cultivation will be cut off. Zhongli Zhe's eyes suddenly shrank, and then he said with a smile, don't worry, Vice Pavilion Head. I have my own means to avoid the attack of the Blade of Time. Well, you go first. I will also go to watch the battle in person later to cheer for you. Fu Wenli said. Yes. Zhongli Zhe turned around and left. Vice Deacon Lin has issued another challenge to be promoted to the position of deacon. Deacon Zhongli Zhe of Yuan Sky Pavilion has set out to accept the challenge. The news spread very quickly in the 3 pavilions and 9 peaks of Yuan sect, causing a great uproar. Is Lin Sun crazy? He is only in the heavenly longevity realm. How can he challenge Zhongli Zhe, who is in the Nirvana realm? Not only were the descendants surprised, but even some of the big shots of the 3 pavilions and 9 peaks were shocked. Isn't this exactly what the enemy wants? Zhongli Zhe can't wait for this day to come. Some of the big shots who had a good impression of Lin Sun couldn't help but feel distressed. Quick, go to Yuan Sky Pavilion. The gap in cultivation is so huge. I have never seen such a battle since ancient times. I just don't know where Vice Deacon Lin gets the confidence to do this. Cut the crap, let's go. Everyone in the Yuan sect, whether they were the big shots or the descendants, stopped what they were doing and rushed to Yuan Sky Pavilion. Such a battle was indeed rare. A heavenly longevity realm cultivator challenging a Nirvana realm cultivator in the Nirvana realm was simply shocking. It was rarely seen since ancient times. It's only been a month, and he's already so impatient? Yuan Changtian couldn't help but be stunned when he heard the news. He found it hard to believe. The more he acts like this, the more it proves that he's not worthy of being young master's enemy, Yuan Shi said disdainfully. No, I don't think Lin Sun will be so reckless. Yuan Changtian pondered. Old ancestor, please accompany me to have a look. Although I've met him once, I've never seen his strength. I can take this opportunity to observe him. Okay. Yuan Shi nodded in agreement. At the same time, in Yuan Sky Pavilion, Zhongli Zhe has accepted your challenge. I plan to arrange this battle in the Heavens Evolution Dojo. Fang Daoping pondered. It's up to you, senior, Lin Sun said casually. Fang Daoping glanced at Lin Sun and couldn't help saying, are you still not going to tell me the truth? A month ago, Lin Sun, who had been repeatedly refused, said he would challenge Zhongli Zhe again in a month. Now, Zhongli Zhe had accepted the challenge, but Fang Daoping didn't know where Lin Sun's confidence came from. Senior, let me keep you in suspense. You'll know when the battle begins. Lin Sun said with a smile. You. Fang Daoping shook his head helplessly. Let's go to the Heavens Evolution Dojo. P.S. Thank you, everyone, for your monthly votes. I will send them to you as soon as possible. Chapter 29-21. The Skyflow Dojo. There were people everywhere. There were big shots from the 3 pavilions and 9 peaks of the Yuan Church, but there were even more disciples and successors of the 3 pavilions and 9 peaks. The scene was lively, and whispers could be heard continuously. From time to time, many people would look at the center of the Skyflow Dojo and see an imposing figure standing there. He wore an official robe, and his skin was faintly golden. He stood tall with his hands behind his back. Zhonglizhe. He was ranked first among the 12 deacons of the Origin Pavilion, and he was a Nirvana god at the Great Perfection stage. In the outside world, a person like him could already support an immortal emperor clan. Even in the Yuan world, Zhonglizhe's status was equivalent to that of the 9 peak masters, and he could already be considered a big shot. At this moment, Zhonglizhe's expression was calm. He looked down and completely ignored the gazes from the surroundings. He knew that many people would definitely look down on him and think that his acceptance of Lin Sun's challenge was no different from bullying the weak. But he didn't care. At the end of the day, Lin Sun was the one who issued the challenge. His acceptance of the challenge wouldn't affect his reputation much. On the contrary, what Zhonglizhe wanted to do the most was to use this opportunity to brutally beat Lin Sun up. Over the years, Lin Sun's reputation had risen, and his every move affected the hearts of the Yuan Church. If such a peerless figure was trampled under his feet today, it would definitely be interesting, right? Thinking of this, Zhonglizhe felt a little excited in his heart. There was a commotion in the crowd in the distance, followed by a clamor. Lin Sun is here. Sigh, I really don't know what he's thinking. Why would he challenge Deacon Zhonglizhe so rashly? If he's defeated, his spirit of the great Tao will be destroyed. How do you know that Vice Deacon Lin will lose? Since when can someone at the great perfection of the heavenly longevity realm defeat someone at the great perfection of the Nirvana God realm? Since ancient times, such a thing has never happened in the entire eternal world. Amidst the discussion, Lin Sun and Fang Daoping's voices had already reached the Skyflow Dojo, and Lin Sun instantly became the focus of everyone's attention. Most people had complicated expressions. They didn't understand why Lin Sun would do such a rash thing. Some people were full of expectations, thinking that Lin Sun must have the confidence to do so. Lin Sun glanced around and saw Fu Wenli, Qi Shaoyun, Qi Wen and other deputy pavilion heads, as well as Xian Feiling, Du Guyong and others. But when his gaze swept past a corner, he couldn't help but be stunned, and he said, "Isn't Deacon Mu Qin in closed-door cultivation? You actually have the time to come and join in the fun today?" Everyone followed his gaze and saw the attendant of Origin Pavilion, Mu Qin. They could not help but reveal some disdain. A month ago, the first opponent Lin Sun wanted to challenge was Mu Qin. However, this Nirvana realm cultivator avoided the challenge and claimed that he was in closed-door training. But now, he had come to watch the show. How could others not look down on him? Humph. Mu Qin's expression turned gloomy. I don't think I need to ask Deputy Deacon Lin when I come out of seclusion, right? Of course. Lin Sun nodded. If Deacon Mu Qin doesn't mind, I'd like to take this opportunity to learn from you. But I don't know whether Deacon Mu Qin will avoid this time? An uproar broke out. No one had expected that Lin Sun would dare to make trouble at this time. Mu Qin was also stunned, and an unspeakable anger surged in his heart. Under the watchful eyes of the public, he was provoked like this. If he didn't agree, how could he establish himself in the sect in the future? However, before he could speak, Zhonglizhe, who had been waiting in the Heaven's Evolution Dojo for a long time, said indifferently, "Deputy Deacon Lin, your opponent in this assessment is me, not the others present." His voice spread throughout the whole dojo. "Don't worry, you'll definitely be the first," Lin Sun said with a smile. "A month ago, many deacons couldn't accept my challenge because they had various things to deal with, which made me feel quite regretful. So I want to take this opportunity to learn from these deacons, so that I don't have to worry about this matter anymore." Everyone present had a strange look on their faces. Did he think he would be Zhongli's opponent? Cut the crap. Let's fight. In the Heaven's Evolution Dojo, Zhongli was impatient. Can't you be more straightforward? Lin Sun, today is the assessment for your promotion to deacon. It's of great importance. Don't waste everyone's time. In the distance, Fu Wenli, the deputy pavilion master, spoke coldly. He was sick of Lin Sun's previous actions. Deputy Pavilion Master Fu is right. I really can't waste too much time. Lin Sun flashed happily and floated to the Heaven's Evolution Dojo. The noisy atmosphere suddenly became silent, and all eyes fell on Lin Sun and Zhongli. Deputy Deacon Lin, this is an assessment. Although there's a huge gap between our realms, once the battle starts, I won't show any mercy. When you lose, you'd better not blame me for bullying you. Zhongli said coldly. Of course. Lin Sun nodded. Boom. Zhongli stopped talking nonsense, and his power suddenly changed. A golden immortal halo emerged, and a Dharma idol of will sat in it, shining brightly. The aura belonging to the Nirvana realm's great perfection spread out. Many people's expressions changed, and their hearts sank. How could Lin Sun compete with such power? Rise. Zhongli's eyes were like swords as he spat out a word. Clang. A black spear appeared, and Zhongli grabbed it. His figure tore through the void, and like a bolt of lightning, he thrust the black spear out. It was too fast. The moment he attacked, it was a thunderous blow, and he didn't show any mercy at all. Many Nirvana realm cultivators couldn't help but shiver when they saw this scene. They felt a great threat and pressure. Not to mention Heavenly Longevity Realm experts. Even Heavenly Longevity Realm experts like them would have to go all out in order to deal with such a slaughter. How could Lin Sun resist it? Everyone's eyes looked at Lin Sun in unison. To everyone's surprise, Lin Sun didn't dodge, nor did he retreat. Instead, he charged forward. Many people had the same thought in their minds. A mantis trying to stop a chariot is like hitting a rock with an egg. Wasn't it like a mantis trying to stop a chariot with such a huge gap in their realms? Clang. The black spear and Lin Sun's fist energy collided, and the entire Heavenly Evolution Dojo shook violently. Then, a violent torrent of destruction spread out from the collision. It was so dazzling that people couldn't open their eyes. But the scene of Lin Sun being defeated in one move didn't happen, and his figure didn't even shake. On the contrary, the black spear in Zhongli's hand was trembling violently. His expression changed slightly, as if he realized something. But before he could react, Lin Sun struck out thousands of fist energy in an instant. Every fist energy was like a chaotic furnace smashing down, intending to incinerate everything in the world. When hundreds and thousands of heavy punches blasted out like a storm, the scene caused Zhongli to be somewhat dumbfounded. Was this the combat strength that a Heavenly Longevity Realm cultivator could possess? However, he was in existence at the Nirvana realm after all, so he attacked immediately. The black spear in his hand swung and swept out. It was a simple move, but it set off endless black lightning. It was as violent as a hurricane, and it wreaked havoc like a vast ocean. The thick power of law interweaved, making this attack seem exceptionally overbearing. Rumble! The thousands of fist energy were swept away. A burst of exclamations came from outside the arena. Just as Lin Sun was about to be hit by the black spear, a sword cauldron rushed out in front of him with a roar and smashed down with billions of rays of light. The world was suddenly thrown into chaos. As the sword cauldron smashed down, Zhongli's black spear suddenly bent into a huge arc, as if it was about to break. Zhongli's figure was shaken by the impact, and his face was pale. His eyes were filled with disbelief. The power of the Nirvana realm! He shouted, looking shocked and angry. He felt like he had been deceived. He had always thought that Lin Sun was at the Heavenly Longevity realm. Who would have thought that in just a month, Lin Sun had already broken through and entered the Nirvana realm? The arena was also in an uproar. The power Lin soon displayed in this attack was indeed not something that a heavenly longevity realm cultivator could possess. This undoubtedly proved that he was already a Nirvana realm cultivator. A Nirvana realm cultivator with the potential of an immortal supreme. No wonder Deputy Deacon Lin is so fearless. Turns out that he has already broken through. There's going to be a good show to watch. It was unknown how many people were excited. That despicable thing. Those experts who hated Lin Sun couldn't help but curse in their hearts. They didn't expect that Lin Sun would break through in just a month. Haha, I knew it. Fong Daoping twirled his beard and laughed. He had some doubts before and guessed that Lin Sun had broken through. However, Lin Sun's aura was obscure, and he couldn't identify it. But now, he was finally sure. I knew this kid wasn't a reckless person. It turns out that he has broken through. Yuan Changtian stood in the distance with his hands behind his back. His handsome face revealed a look of relief, and he said with interest, in this case there are many more variables in this battle. There was still a huge difference between a Nirvana realm cultivator, who had just broken through, and a Heavenly Longevity realm cultivator, who had reached the Heavenly Longevity realm. For Yuan Changtian, Lin Sun's cultivation was still at a disadvantage. While the arena was in an uproar, Lin Sun and Zhongli Zhe were already fighting fiercely in the Heavenly Evolution Dojo. Boom! Lin Sun was still barehanded, but his power was completely different from before. He was strong and disdainful, and every punch he threw was like a god lifting an ancient divine mountain and smashing it down. After the initial shock, Zhongli Zhe had calmed down and fought calmly. The black spear he wielded displayed endless mysterious power. After all, he was the #1 deacon of the Sky Origin Pavilion. Moreover, he had mastered extremely powerful secret techniques and talent. When he went all out in battle, the power he displayed was extraordinary. But as time passed, Zhongli Zhe's expression gradually turned serious, and his eyes occasionally flashed with surprise. He had already used his full strength, but he still couldn't suppress Lin Sun. Instead, he began to feel pressured. However, Zhongli Zhe remained calm from beginning to end, and his state of mind was firm. A person like him wouldn't let such an unforeseen event affect his fighting spirit. P.S. The second round came a little later. Chapter 29-22. Boom. On the battlefield, Zhongli Zhe seized the opportunity to display his innate talent. Endless evil fire. On the black spear, a gray line of fire spread. When it reached the tip of the spear, it suddenly exploded and turned into hundreds of millions of sparks. Exclamations sounded in the field. This strike was dazzling and extremely dangerous. The Nirvana realm cultivators couldn't help but feel terrified. The abyssal sword cauldron rotated and blocked in front of Lin Sun. Countless sparks flew towards Lin Sun, but they were all wiped out by the sword cauldron. Clang! Even the black spear was blocked by the abyssal sword cauldron, unable to move it at all. Zhongli Zhe narrowed his eyes slightly. Without any delay, he displayed his trump card again. Boundless Flame. His body shone brightly like a burning sun. The black spear in his hand was bathed in dazzling light, and the nearby void twisted and collapsed violently as if it was incinerated. When this strike was launched, the entire Skyflow Dojo was dazzled as if it was drowned in light. Boom! However, along with a rumble, the boundless flames seemed as if they'd been torn apart, and they were forcefully crushed and dispersed by the sword cauldron. And in the sword cauldron, a Taoist sword slashed out. Clang! Zhongli Zhe blocked with the black spear, but his arms were hit by the Taoist sword. His whole body seemed to be flipped over and shot back. Everyone outside the field was shocked. By now, the two had exchanged thousands of blows, but Zhongli Zhe, who was at the peak of the Nirvana realm, didn't gain any advantage. His attacks were continuously thwarted. In the distance, the eyes of Fu Wenli, Qi Xiaoyun and other big shots flickered, and there was a haze between their eyebrows. Zhongli Zhe's performance didn't let them down. The power he used was commendable in this realm, but it was a little inferior to Lin Sun's. In fact, in the eyes of Fu Wenli and the others, Lin Sun, who had just broken through to the Nirvana realm, was undoubtedly too dazzling. His combat power was simply heaven-defying, and they found it hard to believe. As a result, even if Zhonglizhi tried his best, he couldn't overshadow Lin Sun's brilliance, let alone suppress him. On the battlefield, the battle became more and more intense. Thousand flames. Burning heart flame. Calamity fire's end. Zhonglizhi's imposing aura was terrifying as he utilized all his trump cards and displayed his cultivation to the limit, causing the spectators outside the battlefield to shudder with fear. Everyone could see that Zhonglizhi was putting his life on the line and was no longer holding back. However, what was more shocking was that Lin Sun resisted and resolved all of Zhonglizhi's killing moves one by one. Lin Sun couldn't hurt him at all. At this moment, even Zhonglizhi's expression was as solemn as water, filled with shock and anger. There was such a huge gap between their realms, but he couldn't do anything to the other party. If he lost, it would be a small matter to lose face, but losing his deacon position was something that Zhonglizhi couldn't bear. You can't. At this time, Lin Sun said indifferently, at best, it's just a whetstone on my way to Nirvana God. Whoosh. His aura suddenly changed as he charged forward with the sword cauldron. Boom. When the sword cauldron struck horizontally, Zhonglizhi immediately coughed up blood from the impact, and his figure swayed. He had tried his best to resist, but in such a head-on collision, he was injured. What made Zhonglizhi even more intolerable was that Lin Sun regarded him, a Nirvana god in full mastery, as a whetstone. Go! A cold light flashed in Zhonglizhi's eyes, and he opened his mouth to spit. Whoosh! A 3-inch-long dark blue flying knife burst out, came to Lin Sun's head like a ghost, and suddenly chopped down. The speed was so fast that most people outside the field had no time to react. But Lin Sun's reaction was extremely fast. A Taoist sword whizzed out of the sword cauldron and blocked the dark blue flying knife at the critical moment. Clang! The dark blue flying knife shook violently and flew out backward. Zhonglizhi coughed up another mouthful of blood. That was the natal flying knife he had cultivated in his body, and it was also his most powerful trump card. But now it was so easily blocked. Outside the field, the faces of Fu Wenli and other big shots had become gloomy. How could they not see that it was almost impossible for Zhonglizhi to turn the situation around? More people were shocked by Lin Sun's combat power. It was too strong. He didn't look like a person who had just broken through the realm of Nirvana spirit at all. Otherwise, how could Zhonglizhi, who was at the great completion of Nirvana spirit realm, be continuously injured? Kill! Zhonglizhi shouted. His hair was disheveled and his eyes were red, as if he was desperate. If he was defeated by Lin Sun today, there was only one result waiting for him: losing his position as a deacon and losing his face. He would never be able to raise his head in the sect again. When he first learned of Lin Sun's challenge, he was quite excited and planned to take advantage of this opportunity to beat Lin Sun. Boom! On the battlefield, Zhonglizhi's momentum became more and more terrible. His spear swept across the sky and the earth. Wherever it passed, the earth trembled and the void was in disorder. It was extremely terrible. However, Lin Sun had already figured out Zhonglizhi's strength, so he didn't intend to fight with him anymore. His figure suddenly stretched out, and the sword cauldron moved horizontally, crushing the void and smashing down. Clang! In the earth-shattering explosion, Zhonglizhi's spear flew out of his hand, and his whole body was smashed to the ground. His body was broken, and he was almost smashed into a meat pie. But this wasn't the end. At the same time that Zhonglizhi was suppressed, Lin Sun had already teleported over, and he stretched out his hand to grab Zhonglizhi's broken body. "You're not allowed to kill!" Fu Wenli's shout resounded in the distance. On the other hand, Qi Shaoyun, Qi Wen, and the other important figures were all furious. Zhonglizhe had lost too quickly and too miserably, and his body was almost destroyed. They were unable to accept such an outcome. In the Heaven Flow Dojo, Lin Sun casually tossed Zhonglizhe out and said indifferently, "I naturally know that killing is prohibited in the Heaven Flow Dojo." Bang! Zhonglizhe tumbled to the ground and fell unconscious. Outside the Heaven Flow Dojo, the crowd was in an uproar. "Good job, Vice Deacon Lin. From today onward, you should be called Deacon Lin. Awesome! He's at the early stage of Nirvana realm, and he's able to surmount the middle, late, and perfect stages and suppress his opponent in one go. Such heaven-defying combat strength is truly rare since ancient times, and it's sufficient to shock the ancients and dazzle the contemporaries." Excited shouts rose and fell, and many people in the 3 pavilions and 9 peaks of the Yuan sect looked at Lin Sun with bright and fanatical eyes. From the very beginning of this battle, many people were worried that Lin Sun would lose. But now people realized that for a person like Lin Sun who defied the natural order, he probably had enough confidence to win, so he dared to challenge like this. Not bad at all. Fang Daoping, Xian Feiling, Du Guyong, and the other big shots all laughed, especially when they saw the ugly expressions of Fu Wenli and the others. In recent years, watching Fu Wenli and the others suffer and be embarrassed had become a habit of Xian Feiling and the others, and this habit was cultivated through the battles since Lin Sun entered the sect. Very good. Congratulations, Lin Sun. From today on, you're a deacon of the Yuankong Pavilion. In the distance, Fang Daoping laughed loudly. Congratulations, Deacon Lin. Someone cupped his hands and said. Then, many descendants present cupped their hands and said in unison, Congratulations, Deacon Lin. Their voices resounded through the sky. Everyone's expression was filled with awe, fanaticism, and excitement. For them, Lin Sun was like a legend. Since he joined the sect to the present, his deeds had long been deeply rooted in their hearts. At this time, those enemies who hated Lin Sun looked very uncomfortable, as if they had swallowed flies. Deacon. This was the existence who could be on an equal footing with the 9 peak masters. Who would have thought that Lin Sun, who had only been in the sect for about 10 years, had already climbed to this position? Not bad at all. I underestimated him before. Yuan Changtian clapped his hands and praised. Young lord, isn't it a little too much to praise others and belittle our own? Yuan Shilya whispered. Yuan Changtian laughed and said, Old ancestor, jealousy is the weapon of the incompetent. Appreciation is the greatest respect for the enemy. Yuan Shilya said with relief, Young lord, your cultivation is getting better and better. At this time, Lin Sun glanced around. Seeing the excitement and respect on the faces of most people present, Lin Sun was also pleased. The will of the people and the prestige of the people. Now, he had won the approval and support of most people in Yuan school, which was naturally a happy thing. What are you waiting for? Hurry up and bring Zhonglizhe out. Seeing Lin Sun being supported, Fu Wenli became more and more uncomfortable and shouted in a deep voice. There was a moment of silence. Only then did people realize that Zhonglizhe, who was defeated by Lin Sun, was still in a coma in the Tianyang dojo. Immediately, someone rushed in, but when he was about to help Zhonglizhe, who was in a coma, suddenly opened his eyes and shouted, Lin Sun, how dare you destroy my cultivation? I will not live under the same sky with you. His voice was full of anger and resentment. Then, he suddenly coughed up a large mouthful of blood. His figure swayed and he fainted again. It was visible to the naked eye that his appearance had returned to that of a teenager, but the aura around him had weakened to the lowest point. Seeing this, all the people present fell into a dead silence. Everyone was shocked by this scene and couldn't believe it. Even Fang Daoping, Xian Feiling and others narrowed their eyes, feeling unprepared. Who would have thought that Lin Sun had already cut off Zhonglizhe's cultivation silently? This was horrifying. Fu Wenli was furious. With killing intent in his eyes, he pointed at Lin Sun from a distance and said, "Bastard! How dare you kill your fellow apprentice in the assessment of the sect? You can't be forgiven." Before his voice died away, he had raised his hand and slapped Lin Sun fiercely across the air. Boom! The dazzling and blazing power of law intertwined and turned into a huge and terrible hand. But it was blocked by Xian failing before it could reach Lin Sun. "Brother Fu, as the deputy head of the sect, how can you suppress the successor of the sect at will?" Xian failing said coldly. "You have seen with your own eyes how despicable this man is. He not only defeated Zhongli Zhe, but also destroyed his cultivation. This is a heinous crime." Fu Wenli's face was livid. Qi Xiaoyun, Qi Wen, Tang Qiu and other big shots who hated Lin Sun also seemed to be irritated at this moment. The atmosphere around the Tianyang dojo became oppressive and tense. P.S. I will adjust it on the weekend and continue to update tomorrow. Chapter 29-23. A man at the peak of Nirvana realm had his cultivation cut off. This was naturally an extremely serious and vile thing. What's more, Zhongli Zhe was not an ordinary person. He ranked first among the 12 deacons of Yuankong Pavilion, and his status was even higher than that of the 9 peak masters. He could be regarded as a heavyweight of Yuan sect. Moreover, his surname was Zhongli, and he was supported by the Zhongli family of the 8th heaven. Just like that, a great figure with status, cultivation, and background had his cultivation severed today. This was more cruel than killing him. Therefore, Fu Wenli, Qi Xiaoyun, Qi Wen and Tang Qiu were so angry. When sparring and discussing the Tao, how can there be no injuries? In the oppressive and tense atmosphere, Du Guyong said calmly, "All of you have seen this assessment. From beginning to end, Lin Sun did not kill anyone. According to the rules of the sect, as long as no one is killed, it is not a violation of the criminal law." "Ridiculous," Fu Wenli said angrily. "What's the difference between his cultivation and killing? I know you want to protect Lin Sun, but if you don't punish him for what happened today, I won't let it go." "Yes, this is too bad. If everyone imitates Lin Sun in the future and destroys his opponent's cultivation in the competition, won't it be a mess?" Qi Xiaoyun also said coldly. "Yes, we must punish him severely." Qi Wen, Tang Qiu and other big shots who hated Lin Sun all spoke at this moment to punish Lin Sun severely, otherwise they would not let it go. This made everyone present tremble with fear. The development of the situation was completely beyond people's expectation. Even they did not expect that Lin Sun would be so ruthless. Lin Sun, who had become the target of public criticism, looked as calm as ever and said indifferently, "May I ask Deputy Pavilion Leader Xian, according to the rules of the sect, did I make any mistakes?" "No." Xian failing said indifferently, "If you violated the rules, I would have taken you down at the first time before others criticized you. All of you here are also proficient in the rules of the sect, so you should naturally know that in such an assessment, as long as no one is killed, there is no crime." Everyone nodded their heads in agreement when they heard this. In the past, extremely horrifying and fierce battles would frequently occur during the promotion tests. Both parties to the battle were unwilling to have their positions replaced by another, and it was to the extent that when the victor was determined, there would usually be situations where one party was heavily injured and on the verge of death. There were also many examples of their Tao bodies being destroyed and their primordial spirits being severely injured. What was more serious was that they were blasted to the point where only a single drop of origin blood was left. Is being seriously injured the same as losing cultivation? Fu Wenli looked cold and gloomy. As I said, I won't stop until I punish Lin Sun today. Qi Xiaoyun, Qi Wen, and the rest also expressed their support for Fu Wenli's decision. The atmosphere became even more oppressive, and it was oppressive to the point of suffocation. The atmosphere was so tense that everyone couldn't help but feel anxious. They were worried that this matter would cause those great figures to completely shed all pretenses of cordiality. If that was the case, the primordial spirit sect was destined to have no peace. Ancestor, do you think what Lin Sun did today is a pity? Yuan Changtian sighed softly and asked in a voice transmission. Young master, this old servant only knows that Fu Wenli and the others are doing this to help young master eliminate a potential threat to him. Yuan Shiliu, who was next to him, answered indifferently. Eliminate? That's impossible. At most, he will be punished. Don't you see that there are many people in the primordial spirit sect who support and defend Lin Sun? If it gets out of hand, it will only make the primordial spirit sect more divided. From then on, there will be constant turmoil and dispute. Yuan Changtian said casually. Therefore, the greatest possibility is that Lin Sun will be punished in order to settle this matter. Just as he said this, a golden ray of light suddenly appeared in the sky, and then it transformed into a golden scroll that instantly drew the gazes of everyone present here. It's the order of Lord Yenji. There was a shock in the field. They realized that what happened today had alarmed the head of Yuan Kong Pavilion, who hadn't shown up for a long time. The golden scroll unfolded in the sky, and then a deep voice came out of it. For what happened today, Lin Sun will be grounded in his cave residence for 9 years and his salary will be deducted for 10 years. From today on, if something similar happens again, no matter who it is, I won't let it go easily. Every word of the voice resounded through the world like thunder, revealing supreme majesty. Everyone was shocked at first, and then their expressions changed. This punishment. For Lin Sun, it was not a serious injury, but a light punishment. Looking at Xian Feiling, Du Guyong, and others, they couldn't help but smile. Lin Sun didn't violate the rules. He just cut off his opponent's cultivation. This punishment was enough. Fu Wenli, Qi Xiaoyun, Qi Wen, and other big shots were so angry that they almost vomited blood. How could this be called a punishment? Oh, it seems that the head of Yenji is also very protective of Lin Sun. Yuan Changtian laughed. He had expected this result, but he didn't expect that the punishment would be so light. This is unfair and will only make Fu Wenli and others more resentful. As far as I know, Yenji had a problem with his state of mind when he tried to prove the eternal way, so that only a wisp of his spirit survived until now. Such a person is not qualified to be the head of Yuan Kong Pavilion anymore. Yuan Shiliu transmitted his voice coldly. Only a wisp of his spirit. Yuan Changtian's eyes flashed. I hope so. This is not fair. Qi Wen shouted angrily. The faces of Fu Wenli, Qi Xiaoyun, and others were extremely gloomy. They had lost a heavyweight in exchange for such a light punishment. This made them so angry that they wanted to curse out loud. Deputy Qi Wen, are you questioning the decision of the head of Yuan Kong Pavilion? Xian Feiling looked at him coldly. Qi Wen's face changed. I just think that such a punishment is not enough to convince the public. I'm not questioning the prestige of Yuan Kong Pavilion. Xian Feiling ignored him and looked at the others present. Everyone present, do you think this punishment is reasonable? Of course. It should be so. Deacon Lin has never violated the rules. We all feel aggrieved for him to receive such a punishment. We support the decision of head of Yenji. Most of the people present spoke out one after another, clearly expressing their support for Yenji's decision. Qi Wen was so angry that he gritted his teeth. Just as he was about to say something, he was stopped by Fu Wenli. Fu Wenli had calmed down. He looked at Lin Sun in the distance indifferently and said, Since the head has made a decision, we naturally have no objection. I only hope that Deacon Lin will not hurt your fellow disciples in this way in the future. Otherwise, I will give you a severe punishment even if I have to risk my life. After that, he turned around and left. Lin Sun smiled and cupped his hands. Thank you for your teachings, Deputy Pavilion Master Fu. Soon, Qi Xiaoyun, Qi Wen, Tang Qiu and others also left one after another. Congratulations, Deacon Lin. Congratulations, Deacon Lin. At this time, many people present congratulated him again. This time, the deacon was obviously congratulating Lin Sun for not being severely punished. From this, it could be seen that Lin Sun had established his own prestige in the Yuan school and was deeply supported. Otherwise, it would be impossible for him to get so many voices of support. Thank you for your righteous words. Lin Sun also cupped his hands with a smile. Boy, don't do such a thing next time. Seeing Lin Sun walk out of the Heaven's Evolution Dojo, Fang Daoping couldn't help but glare at him. Otherwise, I'm afraid you won't be so lucky next time. Next, you should listen to Head of Yen Ji and meditate in your cave residence. Don't make any more trouble. Xian Failing couldn't help but warn Lin Sun, you've seen the situation this time. If it weren't for Head of Yen Ji's words, you would definitely be in serious trouble today. Lin Sun smiled and nodded in agreement. Soon, Xian Failing, Dugu Yong and others also left one after another. Although today's matter had been settled, these big shots all knew in their hearts that Fu Wenli and others, who bore a grudge, would never let it go. In other words, this matter was tantamount to a falling out between them and Fu Wenli and others. This was very likely to cause a split within the Yuan school, and many discord and turbulence were inevitable. However, this was also what Xian Failing and others wanted to see. Since Lin Sun joined the Yuan school, they had already made up their mind to use Lin Sun to completely clean up the stubborn disease and tumor within the Yuan school. Now, the curtain of this action had just begun. Lin Sun, Peak Master asked me to tell you that no matter what happens in the future, the ninth peak will always stand by your side. Mo Lanshan, the elder of the ninth peak, came and expressed Qin Wuyu's attitude with a smile. Lin Sun was shocked and bowed. Thank you. Soon, the big shots of the 3 pavilions and 9 peaks also came to congratulate Lin Sun, such as Xiao Wenyuan, Li Zhen, Sang Zhongxue, the head of the 8th peak, Tian Wucua, the head of the 7th peak, Wen Dongmian, the head of the 6th peak, and Yu Xiangding, the head of the 5th peak. Lin Sun had become a deacon and replaced the original position of the head of the 12 deacons of the Yuan school. His status could be said to be on the same level as the heads of the 9 peak. In terms of power, he was even more powerful than them. It could be said that over the years, with the constant changes in cultivation, status, and identity, Lin Sun had further gained the recognition and affirmation of many big shots in the Yuan school. This would naturally be of immeasurable benefit to his actions in the Yuan school in the future. At least, knowing that he and those enemies were like fire and water, he could still get the support of so many people in the Yuan school today, which in itself was the greatest recognition and support for him. Brother Lin, congratulations on being promoted to the position of deacon today, and on resolving a disaster. When Lin Sun was about to leave, there was a hearty laughter. Not far away, he saw Yuan Changtian, accompanied by Yuan Shiliu, walking towards him. Dressed in a snow-white robe, he was handsome and outstanding. At this time, when he walked over, he immediately attracted the attention of many people present. Chapter 29-24. In recent years, Yuan Changtian, who had served as the elder of Yuan Pavilion, was undoubtedly the most eye-catching person in Yuan Church. He came from the 9th heaven and was one of the divine sons of Yuan clan. He had reached the middle stage of Nirvana realm. His talent, cultivation, and identity were all powerful enough to put others to shame. But Yuan Changtian was not a domineering and arrogant person. Conversely, he was modest, warm, and meticulous in his dealings with others. Up until now, he'd already won over a good impression in the sect. Now he stood out to congratulate Lin Sun, which naturally attracted people's attention. Elder Yuan, Lin Sun smiled. Lin Sun laughed. What's the matter this time? Yuan Changtian smiled warmly and said, I saw Brother Lin's brilliance and couldn't help admiring you. So I came to congratulate you. Thank you. Lin Sun said, if there's nothing else, I'll take my leave first. Yuan Changtian was speechless and said, Brother Lin, why are you in such a hurry? Anything else? Lin Sun asked. Yuan Changtian pondered and said, Brother Lin, do you know why Pavilion Head Inji grounded you for 9 years? Do you know? Lin Sun asked. Yuan Changtian smiled and said, It's just a guess. But if Brother Lin wants to hear it, I can tell you a little about it. Please enlighten me. 10 years later, the immortal Tao battle initiated by the ancestral court of witchcraft will come to an end in the 10 demonic territory. At that time, each of the 4 ancestral courts will send 5 immortals to participate in the battle. Yuan Changtian said. If that's the case, then the reason why Brother Lin was grounded for 9 years is probably so that Brother Lin would have the opportunity to participate in the law battle 10 years later. Lin Sun was surprised. Is there such a thing? Yuan Changtian smiled and said, The immortal Tao battle is inevitable. As for whether Pavilion Head Inji thinks so or not, I'm just guessing. After hearing this, Lin Sun thought for a while and said with a smile, Then let's talk about it after 9 years. Yuan Changtian cupped his fists and said, Then I won't disturb you any longer. Goodbye. He turned around and left, with Yuan Shiliu following closely behind. For such a great figure who held the position of a guest elder to act like a servant, it made Yuan Changtian's status even more extraordinary. The Eternal Tao Battle. Seeing Yuan Changtian off, Lin Sun turned around and returned to his cave residence without thinking too much about it. In the evening, Tao Ling brought a new nameplate and passed it to Lin Sun. Brother, from now on, you are a deacon like me. Tao smiled coldly and congratulated him. As a deacon, he could receive 25,000 pounds of immortal spirit marrow every month. He could enter the book mountain at will and read the sect's ancient books. He could also recruit disciples for himself. According to the rules, if the deacon wanted to accept a successor, he could choose from the 9 peaks, or he could look for excellent seedlings from the outside world, but he could only accept one successor. The treatment of the successors would be the same as that of the disciples of the 3 pavilions. The sect would distribute cultivation resources every month. Senior, as soon as Lin Sun opened his mouth, he was interrupted by Tao Ling. You and I are both deacons, so we can be called peers. Don't call me senior anymore. Lin Sun smiled and did not refuse. He cupped his hands and said, Brother Tao. Tao Ling smiled as well. That's more like it. You're already in a high position now, and you can be on par with the 9 peak masters. Moreover, you've replaced Zhongli Zhe's position, and when he was an executive, he'd always been in charge of punishing the elders of the 9 peak. Now, this responsibility should be taken over by you, my brother. Speaking of this, he said casually, by the way, I remember that when you were in the 9th peak, Elder Jing Qian made things difficult for you, didn't he? Lin Sun immediately understood and said with a smile, In your opinion, what should I do? Tao Ling said without hesitation, Coordinate from inside and outside. Coordinate from inside and outside? What do you mean? From the peak master to the successor of the 9th peak, they are all on your side. You only need to ask Qin Wuyu, the peak master, to collect some things that are harmful to Jing Qian, and then you can deal a heavy blow to Jing Qian. Tao Ling's eyes narrowed and flashed with cold light. However, if you want to defeat this person completely, these are not enough. You also need to create some opportunities for Jing Qian to make mistakes. As long as he makes mistakes, plus some black materials collected, you can remove him from the position of an elder, and there will be no possibility for him to rise again. Lin Sun could not help but be surprised. No wonder many people were afraid of Tao Ling in the 9 peak. Tao Ling's means were really insidious and ruthless. Brother, why are you looking at me like this? Tao Ling was puzzled. Lin Sun said with a smile, After listening to your words, I can't help but feel enlightened. You. Tao Ling shook his head and sneered. Lin Sun said, I don't care about Jing Qian, but I want to take this opportunity to ask Brother Tao about the immortal Tao battle. Tao Ling sneered, It's not a secret. I will tell you everything I know. After a quarter of an hour, Tao Lung left. Lin Sun fell into deep thought. Tao Lung had already told him about the immortal Tao battle. It turned out that since ancient times, every 3,000 years, the ancestral court of witchcraft would launch a Tao battle, and the location was chosen at the 10 Directions demonic territory. At that time, the 4 ancestral courts would each send 5 immortal figures to participate. If Heavenly Longevity Realm warriors entered the 10 Directions demonic territory, they would be in danger. As for Transcendent Realm warriors, they were the backbone of the 4 ancestral court. Normally, they would not be sent out easily. Therefore, in the past immortal Tao battles, the 4 ancestral courts would often send Nirvana Realm warriors. The rules of the immortal Tao battle were also very simple. Hunt Order wild beasts in the 10 Directions demonic territory. The more Order wild beasts hunted, the higher the ranking. After the immortal Tao battle ended, the 4 ancestral courts would be ranked according to the number of Order wild beasts hunted by their respective ancestral court warriors. In Lin Sun's view, this was a grand event for the immortal figures of the 4 ancestral courts to compete. There was nothing special about it. However, according to Tao Lung, the immortal Tao battle was very particular. Every 3,000 years, an unbelievable change would happen in the 10 Directions demonic territory. At that time, many unimaginable opportunities would be born. For example, in the past, someone had subdued a rare heaven rank 9th order and a spirit of order. Someone had obtained a broken god rank order fragment. Someone had obtained an eternal elixir. Someone had obtained a peerless opportunity to break through to the transcendent realm. This was also the reason why the 4 ancestral courts held the immortal Tao battle. As such an opportunity only appeared once every 3,000 years, the immortal Tao battle would only be held once every 3,000 years. Knowing this, Lin Sun was very interested. It was too difficult for an immortal realm warrior to break through to the next realm. It wasn't something that could be achieved with just a long period of cultivation. It wasn't something that could be achieved by accumulating cultivation resources either. Even an expert with great perseverance and comprehension wouldn't be able to achieve a transformation in their cultivation if they blindly worked behind closed doors. At the end of the day, there were too few opportunities in this world that could satisfy this level of breakthrough. For example, the Nirvana God realm. Ordinary cultivation resources wouldn't be of any use at all. The most helpful thing for this realm's cultivation was to refine order energy. However, order energy was an extremely rare treasure. The higher the rank, the harder it was to encounter. For example, in the realms below the 7th heaven of the eternal world, an earth-rank order energy could support an immortal emperor clan, who would have the heart to refine such order energy. This was also the fundamental reason why Nirvana God realm warriors were rarely seen in the realms below the 7th heaven. It was very simple. Due to the scarcity of order energy in those realms, it was extremely difficult for Nirvana God realm warriors to cultivate. Even in the Yuan school, the cultivation of Nirvana God realm warriors was extremely slow. Some old guys had been cultivating in this realm for thousands of years. There were even some who had been cultivating in this realm for tens of thousands of years. Apart from their own reasons, the most important reason was the lack of order energy. This was only the Nirvana God realm. According to Lin Sun's knowledge, the path to the transcendent realm was 10 times or even 100 times more difficult than the Nirvana God realm. Therefore, for the immortal realm warriors, if there was an opportunity to help their cultivation breakthrough, no one would miss it. However, such opportunities were extremely rare. They needed to wait for a long time, and they needed to wait for the right time. Participating in the immortal Tao battle was undoubtedly such an excellent opportunity. All of this was because of the order wild beasts scattered in the 10 demonic territories. These wild beasts had order energy remaining in their bodies, which was extremely helpful to the Nirvana God realm's cultivation. According to Taoling, the 10 demonic territories was an extremely strange and dangerous place. The order energy left behind after the destruction of many eras' civilizations were buried in it. This was somewhat similar to the boundless thousand battle domains. However, the difference was that for countless years, no one knew how many eras' order energy were buried in the 10 demonic territories. This was because every 3,000 years, a beast tide would erupt in the 10 demonic territories. The beasts that formed the beast tide were the order wild beast. It was said that these ferocious beasts lived by absorbing the broken order energy from the moment they were born. As a result, their strength was extremely powerful. Lin Sun was naturally very interested in this. In the past years, although he had collected a lot of order energy, most of them were refined by Wushuang. Now, he was already in the Nirvana God realm. He also needed to refine order energy to improve his cultivation. Naturally, it was time to consider how to collect more order energy. 9 years later, I have to fight for such an opportunity. Lin Sun secretly made a decision. Time waits for no man. There were only about 90 years left before Pavilion Master Yuan Qing would travel to the North Sea to prove the immortal Tao. Currently, Lin Sun was only in the Nirvana God realm. If he wanted to compete for the Pavilion Master's position, he must at least have the strength of the Transcendent realm. This was the most basic requirement. If he wanted to win the Pavilion Master's position from the competition of the Deputy Pavilion Masters, even the strength of the Transcendent realm was far from enough, and all of this needed to be achieved in 90 years. This made Lin Sun feel the pressure. Breaking through the realm was never an easy thing, especially if he wanted to break through by leaps and bounds on the immortal Tao path. If he followed the normal path of cultivation, he might not be able to prove the Transcendent realm even after thousands of years. Therefore, he must find another way. P.S. Add more updates tonight. The monthly votes ranking was immediately surpassed. Do the children still have tickets? Chapter 29-25. While thinking, Lin Sun took out the abyssal sword cauldron. Inside the cauldron, Nirvana? Order fluctuated, and in the Nirvana? In the world formed by order, Wushuang, netherworld order, and immortal order all lay dormant, undergoing nirvana? Day and night. The nurturing of order. When Lin Sun was in the heavenly longevity realm, he started to comprehend the nirvana. Using the profound meaning of order, he condensed his own immortal law. This also allowed him to rely on the nirvana. Comprehending the immortal law in order gave him an absolute advantage. However, Lin Sun had tried to refine the nirvana order into the immortal law with his nirvana realm strength, but it was extremely difficult. In 7 days, he could only refine a trace of it. If nirvana order was a vast ocean, then what he refined in 7 days was a drop of water. It was too difficult. And it was difficult to see results in a short period of time. However, this was easy to solve, and that was to refine other order energies. The immortal law that Lin Sun had now was condensed from the profound meaning of the nirvana order. This also meant that the order energies that he refined in the future, no matter what grade or attribute, would be turned into the purest energy and become a part of his immortal law. It would not change the attribute of the immortal law. In short, for Nirvana realm, refining order energies was the same as refining the immortal spirit marrow. It would only benefit one's cultivation and the immortal law. Master, you don't tell me you want to refine Shuang Nirvana? In the order, Wushuang, who was dressed in white and looked as pure as a young girl, was anxious and pitiful. Her big watery eyes were filled with worry. Lin Sun woke up from his contemplation. He stroked his chin and asked, "To what extent have you recovered your strength now?" "Heavenly grade 6, Wushuang hurriedly said, "but it will recover to heavenly grade 7 soon." Lin Sun fell into deep thought. Wushuang looked very nervous, her little face was pale, and her eyes were filled with tears. She looked delicate and pitiful, like a prisoner waiting to be sentenced. Lin Sun couldn't help but laugh. You are a spirit of order. You have no emotions and no intelligence. You don't have to pretend anymore. Wu Shuang stammered, Master, the spirit of order is able to develop intelligence and emotions. It is absolutely not something that the grass and trees in this world can compare to. I hope that Master will take pity on it. When Wu Shuang recovers his strength, he will definitely be able to help Master greatly. She seemed to know that Lin Sun was very likely to be dissatisfied with her for eating and drinking for free all these years without showing her value. Don't worry. I'm afraid that no one in this world would be willing to refine the spirit of order, Lin Sun said casually. Wu Shuang secretly breathed a sigh of relief and stuck out her tongue. If Lin didn't know her background, he couldn't help but wonder whether Wu Shuang was a demon. What do you think we should do with Ming and Xian? Asked Lin Sun. Both Little Ming and Little Xian were obtained by Lin Sun in the vast thousand battlefield. They were the Order of the Netherworld and the Order of the Immortal Tao, which belonged to the Immortal Martial Era. Over the years, although these two types of order powers had been weakened, there was almost no amazing change in them. At most, they were comparable to the 9th level of the Earth rank. Wu Shuang said, Master, I can feel that the original power of Little Ming and Little Xian is recovering little by little. One can evolve into the Netherworld, and the other can evolve into the Immortal Realm. This may be of immeasurable help to you in the future. For example? Lin Sun asked with interest. Wu Shuang said, For example, suppressing one's enemies into the Netherworld would cause them to be unable to escape for eternity. Placing one's family and friends in the immortal dimension would allow one to avoid the various tribulations and cultivate there. It's even to the extent that one would be able to avoid the annihilation of this era. Lin Sun was shocked. Avoid the calamity of the destruction of the era? Yes, because both the Order of the Netherworld and the Order of the Immortal Tao belong to the Immortal Martial Era and have already experienced the 5 decay tribulations. Naturally, they will not be hit by the destruction of this era. Wu Shuang said quickly, These are just some of my inferences. If Master wants to know the real mystery of Little Ming and Little Xian, maybe you can wait until they really recover, and then you will know. Lin Sun nodded. Wu Shuang's proposal reminded him of what Chun Linkong said when he left the ruins of fate. In 1,000 years at most, there would be a crisis of the destruction of the era. If Little Ming and Little Xian really had the magical effect as Wu Shuang said, they would definitely come in handy in the future. For the time being, he could not refine them. After thinking for a moment, Lin Sun asked with interest, Wu Shuang, what do you think if I want to refine the Order of Nirvana? How do I refine the Order? The spirit of order undoubtedly knew the power of order best. This, Wu Shuang stammered, Master, the Order of Nirvana is too magical for me to speculate. The Order of Nirvana is too magical for me to speculate. Lin Sun sighed softly. Sure enough, this is called having a treasure but not getting it. Wu Shuang said in a clear voice, But in my opinion, Master has already comprehended the mystery of the Order of Nirvana and condensed the immortal law. The mysteries of order and condense the immortal law. In the future, I'll be like Shuang and refine more order energy. I believe I can also improve my cultivation. Lin Sun said with a smile, I think so too. Wu Shuang seemed to be greatly encouraged by Lin Sun's words. She said with joy in her clear eyes, Master, for others, it may take a lot of time and effort to refine a power of order, but for you there is no such problem at all. Lin Sun raised his eyebrows. Go on. Wu Shuang said, Master can control the nirvana? Order is enough to suppress and refine all kinds of power of order. In this way you can pass the nirvana without refining it. You can obtain the purest power of order. Lin Sun had thought of this, but after getting Wu Shuang's confirmation, he finally dared to believe that it was completely feasible. Now only the power of order is left. Lin Sun thought, Master, if Wu Shuang can recover to the peak, I can also help you find more power of order, and help you subdue them, Wushuang said in a clear voice. Lin Sun laughed and said, Don't worry, when I collect the power of order in the future, I will definitely help you. How could he not hear Wushuang's worry? Then, Wushuang, thank you in advance. Wushuang's sweet smile was exceptionally pure and bright. Next, Lin Sun began to meditate and cultivate. Lin Sun had to obey the sect's punishment. From now on, he would not have a chance to leave the cave residence for 9 years. But for Lin Sun, this was a good thing. Originally, he had planned to meditate for a period of time, not only for cultivation, but also to take this opportunity to temper the abyssal sword cauldron. There was no such thing as 60 years in the mountains. 3 years had passed in a flash. In a blessed enclave, Yuan Changtian woke up from meditation, and the roaring qi all over his body slowly quieted down. Yuan Shiliu, who had been guarding him, smiled and congratulated him. Congratulations, young master, on entering the late stage of Nirvana God. His voice could not hide his amazement and gratification. This is nothing. I am still far behind my eldest brother and third sister. Yuan Changtian looked calm. Yuan Shiliu said in a gentle voice, Young master is the 9th son of the patriarch. You have cultivated for less than 600 years, but you already have today's attainments. This is a level higher than the eldest son and the third miss. After a pause, he continued, Although the eldest son and the third miss have already reached the transcendent realm, with your foundation and talent, you don't have to worry about not being able to catch up with them in the future. Yuan Changtian smiled and didn't express his opinion. Young master, do you want to participate in the immortal battle? Yuan Shiliu asked. Yuan Changtian said without hesitation, Of course, before I came to the Yuan sect, my father told me a secret. He said that there will be an unprecedented great creation in the demonic territory this time, and it's very likely that it'll be an almost complete divine rank order power. Yuan Shiliu said seriously, If that is the case, I will use all means to get it. Deity-level order. In the 9th heaven, it hasn't appeared for a long time. If such a treasure was really born in the 10 demonic territory, even the Eternal Realm experts would fight for it at all costs. Yuan Shiliu said, Fortunately, such a competition is not big. Only the forces of the 4 ancestral courts will participate. With young master's means, it is not difficult to get such an opportunity. It's hard to say. Yuan Changtian shook his head. When I came to the Yuan sect, there were also divine sons and daughters in the 9th heaven who entered the witchcraft, Zen sect, and Spirit sect respectively. It's just that I don't know which clan they belong to. Yuan Shiliu's eyes flashed. Young master, don't worry. I will find out about this matter. Yuan Changtian nodded and suddenly asked, In the past 3 years, has there been any movement from Lin Sun? Yuan Shiliu shook his head. This boy is very obedient. He has never left his house. Yuan Changtian pondered. Keep an eye on him. He is the successor of the square ancestor. He has also inherited the talent of Luo Tongtian's devouring abyss. We must not underestimate him. Young master, don't worry. According to the countermeasures discussed by Rune Li and the others, when the Immortal Tao battle begins, Lin Sun will also be sent to the 10 demonic territory. Yuan Shiliu's lips were cold. At that time, it is hard to say whether this boy can come back alive from the 10 demonic territory. Both the witchcraft and Zen sect regard him as a thorn in their flesh. If he participates in it, he will indeed suffer immeasurable death. Yuan Changtian said thoughtfully, however, we can't pin all our hopes on others. When the time comes, we may have to trouble old ancestor to go there in person. Young master, have you agreed to let this old servant take action? Yuan Shiliu's eyes lit up. Yuan Changtian shook his head and said, No. You just need to spread the news about Lin Sun to as many enemies as possible. It would be best if you can alarm the Eternal Realm. In that case, you might be able to solve the problem once and for all. Eternal realm? Yuan Shilio said incredulously. Isn't this making a mountain out of a molehill? Old ancestor, you don't understand. Just do as I say. Yuan Changtian said indifferently, but he did not explain. Yuan Shilio was not annoyed. Although Yuan Changtian called him Old Ancestor, he had to address himself as Old Servant in front of Yuan Changtian and obey his will. Because Yuan Changtian was the divine son, this was a rule that the Yuanshi divine clan could not overstep. Old Ancestor, you can leave now. I will continue to cultivate and refine the power of order. I will strive to reach the consummation of this realm before the immortal Tao battle. Yuan Changtian said casually. Yes. Yuan Shilio cupped his hands, turned around, and left. P.S. Update sent. Chapter 29-26. It was also the third year after Lin Sun was grounded. On this day, in the cave residence, a 1-foot-wide space-time portal was suspended in front of Lin Sun. This was the extremely condensed and shrunk Gate of Exile. A few years ago, Lin Sun had tested that the smaller the scope of the Gate of Exile, the longer it could last. For this reason, Lin Sun had been constantly comprehending and deducing the mystery of this talent in the past few years. After countless attempts, he finally compressed the Gate of Exile to the current size of 1 foot. And the Gate of Exile could last for a full quarter of an hour. Moreover, Lin Sun could control the size of the Gate of Exile at will, and even change its position at will, appearing anywhere he wanted. He could command it like an arm. This was an extremely amazing progress. Originally, the reason why Lin Sun did this was to enter the world inside the Gate of Exile and explore it. But in the past few years, as he continued to deduce the mysteries and changes of the Gate of Exile, his control over this taboo ability had improved by leaps and bounds. This could be regarded as an unintentional willow tree. At this time, looking at the 1-foot-wide Gate of Exile, Lin Sun couldn't help but have a bold idea in his mind. If there came a day when he could shrink this door to the size of a dot of light and suddenly unleash it, it would definitely be as swift as Sword Chi. Even if his opponent blocked it, when its power erupted, wouldn't he be able to immediately send his opponent into the world within the door? Similarly, if the door of exile continued to expand, would it be able to instantly swallow and banish a mountain, a city, a heaven and earth, a world? It was a pity that Lin Sun was now grounded and couldn't go out. Otherwise, he would really like to try to see how big the Gate of Exile could expand to its limit. After a quarter of an hour, the Gate of Exile silently turned into a rain of light and dissipated. Lin Sun took a deep breath and began to meditate with his legs crossed. Before, he used the Gate of Exile continuously, which consumed too much of his cultivation. Fortunately, he had the immortal Sun-Moon pill to replenish it. Otherwise, he would be punished to deduct 10 years' salary. It would be difficult for him to satisfy his normal cultivation, let alone use the Gate of Exile so frequently. After a full day, Lin Sun, who had recovered his physical strength to the peak, took a deep breath and displayed the Gate of Exile again. Buzz! The door of exile, which was about a foot long, quietly appeared. Without any hesitation, Lin Sun's figure suddenly turned into a stream of flowing light, swept into the Gate of Exile, and disappeared in the blink of an eye. Inside the cave, only the door of exile floated quietly. It seemed as if the stars had moved, and he'd arrived in another world. In an instant, Lin Sun saw a dark and gloomy world. The earth was crisscrossed with ravines and abysses, and the bottom could not be seen at a glance. The sky was covered by a thick, ink-like darkness, and it was stifling. The surroundings were boundless and dim, and it seemed as if there was no end to it. Standing among them, Lin Sun felt as small as a grain in the sea. Other than that, he didn't feel any other discomfort. This is the world behind the door of exile? Lin Sun looked around. The Gate of Exile was a mysterious divine ability that was completely different from Lord Heavenspan's Edge of Time. Lin Sun had long wanted to know what kind of world it was behind the gate and whether the enemies he had exiled here over the years were dead or alive. And now, he was finally here. Without any delay, Lin Sun stepped forward. The door of exile could only last for a quarter of an hour, which meant that he had to return within that time. Otherwise, once he was trapped here, Lin Sun didn't know how to get out. Whoosh! His figure flickered, flying in the gray and vast world. At the same time, he spread out his divine sense to investigate everything he saw along the way. Soon, a rumbling sound came from the gray and gloomy world in the distance. As Lin Sun flew over, he saw two huge millstones, one black and one white, floating above a huge gray ravine. Each millstone had a range of thousands of meters. They rotated and pressed against each other, crushing the nearby void and producing a rumbling sound. Lin Sun's pupils narrowed slightly. The moment he saw the pair of black and white millstones, a lot of information emerged in his mind. The corpse executioner's disc. It was formed by the obliteration rule. Anyone who was exiled to this world would be crushed and obliterated by the corpse executioner's disc. So, all the opponents I've exiled here over the years have been crushed and obliterated by the corpse executioner's disc? Lin Sun was shocked. At the same time, Lin Sun sensed a wonderful echo in his divine sense, as if the corpse executioner's disc had turned into a part of his body. A thought came to his mind. Boom! Two corpse executioner's discs, one black and one white, suddenly rose into the air and rotated wildly between heaven and earth, releasing a terrifying crushing force that completely distorted and collapsed the nearby void. More terrifying devouring power came from the intersection of the corpse executioner's discs, as if to drag everything in the world over and obliterate it. It was incredible. Stop! Lin Sun's mind moved, and the corpse executioner's disc suddenly stopped and returned to the sky above the huge ravine. However, when he tried to put away the corpse executioner's disc, he failed. In other words, the corpse executioner's disc could only be used in this world and could not be taken away. Interesting. While thinking, Lin Sun continued to move forward. Not long after, a shining mountain full of glowing clouds appeared in the gray and vast world. On the edge of the mountain cliff, a group of bright divine weapons were flying, including Taoist swords, sabers, seals, scrolls, horsetail whisks, gourds, vases, halberds. There were hundreds of them. When Lin Sun spread his divine awareness, he immediately understood. The Cliff of Treasures. After all the cultivators that were exiled to this expanse of the heavens and the earth had their bodies obliterated by the divine corpse slayer disc, all the treasures in their possession would be imprisoned here. Therefore, it was called the Cliff of Treasures. Lin Sun's mind moved, and the Cliff of Treasures suddenly released a strange and terrifying power of rules. The flames were magnificent and dazzling, illuminating the whole world. The Rule of Treasures. An extremely unpredictable power restrained and suppressed the spirituality of all treasures. Feeling all this, Lin Sun couldn't help but be shocked. He thought of the copper coin of treasures, the old toad's natal treasure, which had the same effect as the Rule of Treasures. Soon, Lin Sun's eyes lit up as he saw a familiar treasure. It was a short blade, with a blade like a transparent cicada's wing, full of illusory and translucent breath of time. It was looming among the treasures, extremely inconspicuous. But Lin Sun was excited. Blade of Shadow. The treasure left by his great-grandfather, the Lord of Tongtian. When he was in the sixth heaven, he collected it with the Gate of Exile. Lin Sun immediately waved his hand. Whoosh! The treasures suppressed by the treasure cliff were all collected by Lin Sun like a tide. Among them was the blade of luminous Shadow Child. Where is the divine mountain of metamagnet? Lin Sun frowned. Back then, in the origin magnetic wind belt, the forbidden area of the Chaos Demon Sea, he had collected a divine mountain of metamagnet with the Gate of Exile. Logically speaking, he should be able to find it near the Cliff of Treasures. As Lin Sun pondered, he continued to explore forward. Time passed. Even after moving nearly 30,000 kilometers, he still didn't find anything. Lin soon made a prompt decision and returned. Half a quarter of an hour was almost up. He couldn't stay any longer. In the cave mansion. Swish. As soon as Lin Sun's figure came out, the foot-long gate of exile spread out and disappeared. Thinking of his previous experience in the Gate of Exile, Lin Sun was finally sure that that place was a real secret realm. Or it could be called the World of Exile. So far, the places he had explored included the location of the divine disk of corpse beheading and the Cliff of Treasures. The former contained the extremely violent and terrifying obliteration law, while the latter contained the extremely rare treasure falling law. The Great Path Law was a type of Great Path power that was higher than the Great Path Law. Now, Lin Sun understood that the law was born from the Order power, and the Order power was born from the World Law. In short, the Great Path Law was stronger than the Order power. The Transcendent Realm was not bound by the World Law of the era. As for the Eternal Realm, they could use the World Law. This also meant that whether it was the Obliteration Law or the Treasure Falling Law, they were powers that Lin Sun couldn't comprehend at the moment. But in the World of Exile, he was like the ruler and could control these two types of law power. Lin Sun had a hunch that the World of Exile wouldn't only contain these mysteries. Other than the divine disk of corpse beheading and the Cliff of Treasures, there should be more secrets. He decided that he would explore the exiled world in the next period of time and strive to understand all the secrets within it. As he pondered, Lin Sun sat cross-legged on the ground and began to meditate. At the same time, he took out the blade of light and shadow and examined it carefully. Many years ago, Master Lu said that the reason why the blade of light and shadow could be imprinted with the power of time was because it was mixed with 50,000 kilograms of divine magnetic iron. Otherwise, ordinary treasures wouldn't be able to withstand the corrosion and destruction of the power of time. Lin Sun clearly remembered that Master Lu once told him that the talent of devouring abyss had something to do with the power of time. When he awakened the fourth stage of his talent, he could condense the power of time into the divine law and imprint it on his life weapon. In this way, he would be able to utilize the energy of time with every single move he made in battle. Moreover, Master Lu left behind 9 God-forbidden Tao diagrams, which were specially used to refine the divine magnetic iron and condense the power of time. Lin Sun didn't lack the divine magnetic iron. When he was in the Chaos Demon Sea, apart from taking away the divine magnetic mountain, he also collected 50,000 kilograms of divine magnetic iron. However, he hadn't awakened the fourth stage talent and couldn't condense the power of time into the law as a result. Although he had been refining the abyssal sword cauldron for 3 years, he couldn't imprint the power of time into it. At this moment, Lin Sun couldn't help but feel helpless as he looked at the blade of light and shadow. What was the fourth stage of innate divine ability? He had been pondering over it for the past 3 years, but to no avail. Even though he had pondered and evolved the mysteries of the door of exile to the extreme, his talent showed no signs of transformation. Lin Sun put away the blade of light and shadow and meditated. He planned to continue entering the world of exile after his physical strength recovered. Chapter 29-27. Time flew by. Another month passed quickly. On this day, Lin Sun walked out of the Gate of Exile with a frown. It had been a month, and he'd practically entered the exiled realm every single day. However, he'd actually gained nothing during this entire month. Standing there and thinking for a moment, Lin Sun couldn't help but sigh. At the end of the day, it was because the banished gate had only existed for a short period of time. It had only lasted for a quarter of an hour, which greatly limited his movements. Up until now, he had only explored an area of 50,000 kilometers at most. Any further and there wouldn't be enough time. This can't go on. Lin Sun took a deep breath and decided that from today on, he would continue to deduce the mystery of the gate of exile. In any case, he had to prolong its duration. He sat cross-legged in meditation. Year after year passed. In the 6th year of Lin's confinement, inside the cave, sitting cross-legged, Lin Sun suddenly opened his eyes. After several years of deduction, he finally understood all of the mysteries of the banished gate, and there was no longer a trace of profoundness that could be unearthed. Let's start. He took a deep breath and activated his cultivation. Buzz. In the blink of an eye, the void suddenly twisted and buzzed. A space-time rift appeared, and a foot-long banishment gate condensed. As Lin Sun stretched out his hand, as if a stone had been thrown into a calm lake, the foot-long door of exile suddenly began to shrink, gradually becoming the size of a palm leaf fan, the size of a fist, the size of a copper coin. In the end, it had already transformed into a speck of illusory light. It was like the edge of a sword that was peerlessly dazzling and resplendent, and the aura of time it emanated carried a fierce aura that pierced the heart. Lin Sun watched quietly. Time passed slowly, but the door of exile, which had turned into a speck of light, did not change. 15 minutes. Half an hour. An hour later, the speck of light suddenly dimmed, and with a bang, it turned into a magnificent rain of light that scattered down. 1 hour. That was 8 times more than half a quarter of an hour. Lin Sun couldn't hide the joy in his heart. He calculated for a moment. Using the gate of exile to this extent consumed about 30% of his cultivation. This consumption couldn't be considered serious, but it was enough to make the gate of exile last for an hour. Lin Sun restrained his impulses and sat cross-legged to meditate. He didn't use the gate of exile again until the consumed power was completely restored. Then, his figure turned into a beam of light and rushed into it. The familiar gray and boundless world came into Lin Sun's sight. Without any delay, he moved at full speed. After a quarter of an hour, 100,000 li away. In the past, he could only search this distance, but now it was completely different. He didn't stop and continued forward. Along the way, his divine sense spread throughout the world, constantly sensing. 15 minutes and a half after entering the banished realm, Lin Sun suddenly stopped, and a touch of shock appeared between his eyebrows. In the distance, a vast expanse of white waterfall poured down from the dusky sky, and it was like a snow-white icicle rushing into an abyss on the ground. It was a waterfall of time. The white waterfall was full of the power of time, dazzling and illusory. On the side of the waterfall of time falling from the 9th heaven, there was a black mountain floating, emitting obscure power and bearing the baptism of the waterfall of time. Magnetic Mountain. When he saw this mountain, Lin Sun was excited again. He took a deep breath and approached it. As he stepped forward, he was keenly aware that the closer he got to the waterfall of time, the slower the flow of time between heaven and earth became. When he came to the position of Magnetic Mountain, the passage of time was almost stagnant. It was as if the line of time was stretched extremely long. Lin Sun felt that one day here might only be a quarter of an hour in the outside world. There was no doubt that the rule of time had changed in front of the waterfall of time. Lin Sun sensed it with his divine sense. Boom! When his divine sense touched the vast expanse of time, his mind seemed to be hit hard, and then countless mysteries of the Great Way rushed into his sea of consciousness like a tide. Caught off guard, the only thing Lin Sun could do was to try his best to control his mind and calm himself down. Soon, a burning feeling came from the heart vein in his chest. The spiritual vein was like a volcano that had been dormant for many years, gradually waking up. Is it the time to awaken a new talent? As soon as this thought flashed through his mind, Lin Sun subconsciously sat cross-legged and meditated. Boom! In the next moment, his quintessence spirit vein erupted like a volcano. Obscure and terrifying time energy swept out, and it transformed into a strand of white light that shot into the sky from his soul altar. The waterfall of time in the distance shook violently at this moment, and then countless tiny torrents of time rushed out and bathed Lin Sun in them as if they were drawn. An incredible scene happened. Lin Sun's appearance began to change, amazingly. Sometimes he turned into a young man, sometimes he turned into an old man, sometimes he returned to his childhood, and sometimes he turned into a man in his prime. This kind of change kept happening, and in the end, Lin Sun's figure became blurred and distorted. The surging power of time rushed into his spiritual vein, which was like a bottomless abyss at this moment, devouring everything crazily and greedily. After a long time, Lin Sun only felt a tearing pain in his chest, which made him let out a muffled groan. But soon, the pain disappeared, and the spiritual vein, which was like a volcanic eruption, fell into silence again. Lin Sun opened his eyes. The waterfall of time poured down in the distance, and everything was white. Everything had been restored to its original state. However, Lin Sun's mind was fermenting with countless insights. Subconsciously, he stretched out his hands and made a mudra in the void. As his slender fingers constantly overlapped and changed, wisps of the power of time were drawn and lingered in the mudra he made. Tut! Suddenly, Lin Sun separated his hands and waved them forward. Buzz! In the void, a layer of mysterious forbidden power suddenly appeared, like a barrier between heaven and earth, which was condensed by countless wisps of the power of time. It was a mysterious and unfathomable restrictive barrier. Lin Sun's heart was filled with unspeakable joy and excitement. Time Seal. The fourth stage of the talent power. Its power lay in the word seal. When this power was released, the law of time between heaven and earth would be drawn by the talent power to form a forbidden barrier. This reminded Lin Sun of one thing. The flowing light forbidden zone in the ruins of fate was covered with the time seal. A long time ago, the eternal night divine emperor, who had suffered a great calamity and was severely injured, had used this time restriction to fend off the pursuit of a group of powerful enemies, allowing himself to remain silent in the eternal coffin. Countless years had passed, but no one had been able to break through the time restriction she had set up. Undoubtedly, what Sun and Moon Emperor used at that time was the fourth stage of the talent power, which forcibly drew the law of time between heaven and earth and turned it into a forbidden barrier that no one could break through for countless years. Thinking of this, Lin Sun couldn't help but feel shocked. To use time as a barrier, there were probably very few eternal beings in this world who could break through this kind of power. However, Lin Sun also knew that he had just awakened this power, which was far from being comparable to Eternal Night Emperor at that time. The power of the time seal was bound to be limited. But in the future, as he understood the mystery of this power, its power was bound to be more and more powerful. Whoosh! Exhaling a long breath, Lin Sun stood up. He now knew that the waterfall of time between heaven and earth was called flow of time. It was transformed by the power of the law of time. When he used the time seal here, he could draw the power of the flow of time to produce an unimaginably terrible power. Suddenly, Lin Sun realized one thing. How long had it been since he entered the gate of exile? He quickly deduced, and after a while, he breathed a sigh of relief. The law of time near the flow of time had changed and became extremely slow. A day here might be less than a quarter of an hour in the outside world. However, Lin Sun also noticed that the power of this law was not fixed, but would produce extremely subtle changes every once in a while. This made Lin Sun a little worried. If the law of time here accelerated, it would be bad. Not daring to hesitate, he took a deep breath, waved his sleeve, wrapped up the huge divine magnetic mountain, put it into the abyssal sword cauldron, and then returned the way he came. In the cave residence, Lin Sun's figure appeared out of thin air. At this moment, Lin Sun finally felt a lot more at ease, followed by a surge of joy. After being grounded for 6 years, although there was not much progress in cultivation, the gains of these years far exceeded the progress of cultivation. The supernatural power of the Gate of Exile had been deduced by him to the extreme. It could turn into the size of a light spot, and it could also be expanded to an incredible extent. If this was used in battle, it would definitely play an incredible role. The world inside the Gate of Exile also had various mysteries, such as the corpse-killing disc, the treasure cliff, and the flow of time, each with the obliteration law, the treasure-falling law, and the time law. In the future, when he stepped into the eternal realm, there would be no need to worry about not being able to truly understand and control the mysteries of these laws. And the biggest gain was undoubtedly the awakening of the talent of the fourth stage this time. If the power of the time seal was used properly, even if he encountered a disaster, he could also rely on this power to resist and resolve it. It's been 6 years, and there are only 3 years left of the time of grounding. I must take advantage of this period of time to properly temper the abyssal sword cauldron. Lin Sun thought to himself. He had already mastered the time seal and possessed the divine magnetic mountain. He could also go to the exile world to absorb the endless power of time from the flow of time. In this way, he could refine the divine magnetic iron and imprint the power of time on it, thus turning the abyssal sword cauldron into a taboo weapon with the power of time. Let's do it. Lin Sun began to get busy in the cave residence. Although he had been grounded for 6 years, he did not feel bored at all. Instead, he was immersed in it. Even if his grounding punishment was lifted now and he was allowed to leave the cave residence, he would not be willing to in the following time. Lin Sun spent this kind of time in seclusion, not caring about the affairs of the world. Unknowingly, it was already the 9th year of his grounding. P.S. Continue to update tonight. Chapter 29-28. On this day, in Lin Sun's cave residence, the abyssal sword cauldron floated in front of him. Compared with the past, the ancient and solemn walls of the cauldron had an illusory and translucent charm, as if there was a wonderful flow of time flowing on it. Inside the cauldron, the abyssal sword cauldron was floating in front of him. Compared with the past, the abyssal sword cauldron had undergone a qualitative transformation. Compared with the past, the charm of the abyssal sword cauldron had undergone a qualitative transformation. It was completely different. Lin Sun couldn't help but be amazed. Over the past 3 years, in order to refine the abyssal sword cauldron, he would enter the banished realm almost every day. Every time, he would cultivate near the flow of time for a long time. As a result, the abyssal sword cauldron absorbed more time energy day by day. Similarly, the consumption of divine magnetic iron was also extremely astonishing. The 50,000 kilograms of divine magnetic iron that Lin Sun had collected were used up in less than a month. Fortunately, Lin Sun obtained more than 1.5 million kilograms of divine magnetic iron after refining the divine magnetic mountain, which enabled him to refine the abyssal sword cauldron to this level. The divine magnetic iron possessed the force of magnetism, which could bear the power of time. After refining so much force of magnetism, the abyssal sword cauldron was filled with the breath of time inside and outside. Not to mention the power of the abyssal sword cauldron at this time, ordinary practitioners couldn't move it at all even if it was placed there. It was too heavy to bear millions of kilograms of divine magnetic iron. Moreover, it was enshrouded with the power of time. Even practitioners in the same realm would find it extremely difficult to absorb it. In the past, I could only use other means to kill the enemy while using the forbidden death. But now, I can directly release the forbidden death with the sword cauldron. It can not only imprison the enemy for a moment, but also kill him in one fell swoop. Lin Sun's eyes lit up. Not only the forbidden death, but also the blade of time and the banished gate could be released from the sword cauldron. If it was used in battle, it would absolutely play an unimaginable role. After quietly perceiving the abyssal sword cauldron for a long time, Lin Sun opened his mouth and swallowed. The abyssal sword cauldron suddenly turned into a light and flew into Lin Sun's body. It's been 9 years. I don't know how many things have happened in the sect during these 9 years. Lin Sun got up and stretched himself. To him, these 9 years had been peaceful and fulfilling. Apart from cultivating, whenever he was free, he would accompany Xia Ji in the abyssal sword cauldron for a chat. He promised Xia Ji that once the time of her confinement was up, he would apply to the sect to keep her by his side in the name of recruiting a successor, so that she would no longer have to hide in the abyssal sword cauldron. Moreover, as long as Xia Ji had the status of the successor of the Yuan sect, Xia Ji would definitely not be in any danger even if he left alone. After a short rest, Lin soon sat cross-legged again and began to meditate. It had been 9 years, but his cultivation was still at the early nirvana god realm. His progress was extremely slow. The reason was the lack of order energy. At the end of the day, the most effective way to improve one's cultivation in the nirvana god realm was to refine order energy. The more order energy one refined, the faster one's cultivation would improve. But Lin was not in a hurry. With his current attainment, as long as he was not trapped in the cave, he would have plenty of opportunities to search for and subdue the power of order. 3 months later, Tao Ling came and told Lin that the period of confinement was up. "How do you feel?" Tao Ling asked with a smile. "Very good." Lin Sun also smiled. He invited Tao Ling into the cave, took out some wine, and chatted with him. Gradually, he learned about some of the things that had happened in the past 9 years. During this period of time, the most eye-catching person was undoubtedly the divine son Yuan Changtian. In just 9 years, his cultivation had reached the great perfection of the nirvana god realm. The speed of his cultivation was shocking. In addition, the elder of the 9th peak, Zheng Qian, was stripped of his position and thrown into the reflection prison for 1,000 years. Knowing this, Lin Sun could not help but be stunned. Tao Ling smiled and explained that it was Qin Wuyu, the peak master, who made it happen. In short, there was no need for Lin Sun to do anything himself. Zheng Qian was beaten to the ground. At the end of the day, with Lin Sun's current status, people like Qin Wuyu and Tao Ling were willing to help him solve some problems. But when Tao Ling talked about Xian failing, there was a hint of worry on his face. A few years ago, there was news from the 9th heaven that a big figure expressed his opinion and hoped to let Deputy Pavilion Master Xian failing go to the 9th heaven to cultivate. Tao Ling's voice was low. Although Deputy Pavilion Master Xian failing refused, the whole sect is talking about it now. I'm afraid it won't be long before Deputy Pavilion Master Xian failing accepts the order and leaves. Lin Sun's pupils shrank. Who is the big figure in the 9th heaven? What qualifications does he have to interfere in the affairs of Yuan sect? It should be related to the divine clan Yuanshi. It is said that one of their ancestors is a relative of the founder of our sect. As for whether it is true or not, I don't know. Tao Ling lowered his voice, but it is certain that the reason why the Yuanshi did this is to pave the way for Yuan Changtian. This child is now at the great perfection of the nirvana god realm, and is only one step away from the transcendent realm. If he is allowed to break through, he will definitely consider concocting the position of Deputy Pavilion Master. At this time, if there is a vacant position of Deputy Pavilion Master, it is naturally the most advantageous for him. After listening, Lin Sun frowned. There are 9 elders in each of the 3 pavilions, most of whom are at the transcendent realm, and many of them are at the great perfection of the transcendent realm. Even if Deputy Pavilion Master Xian leaves, it seems that a newcomer like him won't have a chance. For Yuan Changtian, there is no need to compete at all. Tao Ling's expression was cold. Let's take our Yuankong Pavilion as an example. After Deputy Pavilion Master Xian failing leaves, there are only 2 Deputy Pavilion Masters left, both of whom are on Yuan Changtian's side. With their help, as long as Yuan Changtian proves his Tao and enters the transcendent realm, he will be able to replace the position left by Deputy Pavilion Master Xian. Lin Sun nodded and said, "If so, it is indeed a little tricky." Tao Ling deliberated for a moment and said, "Brother, I have a suggestion. If you have a chance to seek the position of an elder, you can challenge Yuan Changtian. If you can replace him, he will never have a chance to seek the position of Deputy Pavilion Master. Lin Sun said, I don't mind doing this, but if Yuan Changtian refuses to challenge me, it will be difficult. Taolin couldn't help but sigh. You are right. Lin Sun was very calm and said, I will personally ask Deputy Pavilion Master Xian about this matter. In any case, I can't let Yuan Changtian get what he wants. Not long after the two talked, Taolin left in a hurry. Lin Sun left the cave house and went to visit Xian Failing. Wild Cloud House. As if he had expected Lin Sun to come, Xian Failing was already waiting there. He said, You can't intervene in the affairs of the ninth heaven, so even if you ask, I won't tell you. Lin Sun was startled and said, Senior, do you really have to leave? Xian Failing smiled and said, It's not necessary, but I have long planned to go to the ninth heaven. It would be better if I can break through the realm or something along the way. He was a transcendent realm great perfection, only one step away from the eternal realm. If he broke through the realm, it would naturally be related to stepping into the eternal path. This answer surprised Lin Sun, and he said, Senior, aren't you worried about being bullied? Ha ha, although the ninth heaven is the territory of the eternal god race, it is also a vast world. With my cultivation, the only ones who can bully me in this world are the old geezers at the eternal level. Xian Failing laughed. What's more, since I dare to go, it's not that I don't have any confidence. How can I be so stupid as to look for trouble? You don't have to worry about me. He didn't seem to care. Lin Sun didn't know much about the ninth heaven, so he didn't know what to say for a while. Then, when do you plan to leave? Lin Sun asked. Xian Failing seemed to realize what Lin Sun was going to do, and said with a smile, Are you going to stop Yuan Changtian from getting the position of Deputy Pavilion Master before I leave? Lin Sun nodded. Naturally. Xian Failing said, This is very difficult, and even if you become the Deputy Pavilion Master, your opponents are old geezers like Fu Wenli and Qi Xiaoyun. In addition, there are also old geezers like Yuan Shiliu, Qi Wen, and Tang Qiu. It will cause you a lot of unexpected troubles. Senior, do you think I will care about these troubles? Lin Sun asked. Xian Failing was stunned and said after a moment of silence, But you are only at the early stage of Nirvana God, and there is still a long way to go before you reach the transcendent realm. And I will stay in Yuan sect for 30 years at most. 30 years. Lin Sun's heart sank. This was a bit tricky. Even if he collected more order power, it would be difficult for him to break through to the transcendent realm step by step within 30 years. After thinking for a moment, Lin Sun said, Senior, before you leave, I want to have a try. Xian Failing looked at Lin Sun seriously and said, More haste, less speed. You can't be paranoid about it. Otherwise, it will affect your cultivation. What's more, the position of Deputy Pavilion Master can't change anything at all. I suggest that you don't rush to compete with Yuan Changtian, but focus on the position of Yuan Qing Pavilion Master in the future. After listening, Lin Sun said with a smile, It's just a try. If I fail, I will fight for it in the future. He looked very calm. But under that calm attitude, there was firmness and indisputability. Xian Failing stared at Lin Sun for a moment and suddenly sighed. If my unfilial great-grandson had your ambition and boldness, I would be willing to live 10,000 years less. He was talking about Xian Juyin, which was obviously comparing Xian Juyin with Lin Sun. Lin Sun said, On the road of Tao, not everyone has to choose the same way as me. As long as he is the most satisfied with himself, it will be enough. Xian Failing waved his hand and said, This is called hating iron for not becoming steel. When you have children, you will understand this feeling. After a pause, he continued, Since you have made up your mind, I will not persuade you any more. In the next few years, I will do my best to support you. Speaking of this, he remembered another thing and said with a smile, Not long ago, The big figures in the sect have discussed and unanimously decided to send you and 4 other immortal figures to participate in the Immortal Tao battle held by the Witchcraft Ancestral Court. Send more votes. In fact, Goldfish didn't want to ask for monthly votes every day. But the awkward thing was that if she didn't ask for monthly votes, no one would vote for her. It was so torturous. Chapter 29:29. Unanimous decision? Lin Sun was stunned. Xian Feiling smiled. Yes, including Fu Wenli and Qi Xiaoyun. They all agreed to send you to the Immortal Cultivation Battle. It seems that I'm destined to encounter some dangers in the Ancestral Court. Lin Sun pondered. Xian Feiling laughed. Apart from the dangers in the demon region, where do you think the other dangers will come from? Lin Sun's answer was simple. The Ancestral Court of the Shaman sect and the Zen sect would definitely make trouble. Secondly, Fu Wenli, Qi Xiaoyun, and other big shots would definitely take action. Hearing this, Xian Feiling said, "You're still missing one person. Yuan Changtian?" "Yes, the divine son of the Yuan clan will participate in the Immortal Cultivation battle with you." Xian Feiling said, "On the surface, Yuan Changtian won't harm you, but you still have to be careful." Lin Sun nodded and asked, "Apart from me and Yuan Changtian, who else will participate in the Immortal Cultivation battle this time?" Xian Feiling said, "Elder Chao Beidu of the Yuankong Pavilion, Elder Li Zhen of the Yuankong Pavilion, and Master Yun Tianming of the Second Peak." Lin Sun narrowed his eyes slightly. Chao Beidu was at the peak of Nirvana God Realm and had been serving Fu Wenli. Not long after Lin Sun entered the Yuan sect, Chao Beidu had shown hostility many times. Yun Tianming was an elder of Yun Muzha, a peak of Nirvana God Realm existence with great authority. Lin Sun was sure that Chao Beidu and Yun Tianming would definitely follow Yuan Changtian's lead in this Immortal Cultivation battle. "You must have noticed that you're the only one at the early stage of Nirvana God Realm. The others are all at the peak of Nirvana God Realm," Xian Feiling said. "If I'm not mistaken, the participants sent by the Shaman sect, the Zen sect, and the Spiritual sect must also be at the peak of Nirvana God Realm." He looked at Lin Sun. "How is it? Is it a lot of pressure?" Lin Sun smiled. "It's more interesting with pressure. Otherwise, this trip will be too boring." Xian Feiling raised his thumb and praised. "In the Yuan sect, no one can compare to you in terms of spirit and courage." Lin Sun smiled bitterly. "Senior, there's no need to be so polite between us." Xian Feiling said unpleasantly, "How are you being courteous? If it were someone else like you, I'm afraid they would be anxious and worried." He paused for a moment, and then his expression turned solemn as he said, "You can travel with Elder Li Zhen to the Devil regions this time. In addition, this time, Duguyong and Yuan Shilio will be leading the way. With them keeping watch, there won't be any dangers on the way." Lin Sun nodded. Then, Xian Feiling reminded him of many things. Only then did Lin Sun know that in 3 months, the powerhouses of Yuan sect who participated in the Immortal Cultivation Tournament would set off for the Ancestral Court of Witchcraft. "Senior, I have a request." Before leaving, Lin Sun cupped his hands and said, "What is it?" Xian Feiling was curious. Lin Sun immediately told him about his intention to accept Xia Ji as his disciple. "A piece of cake," Xian Feiling said. "You are now a deacon of the Yuankong Pavilion, so you have long been qualified to accept a disciple. Go to Yuan Qing Pavilion and look for Fang Daoping. He will help you with this." Lin Sun immediately breathed a sigh of relief. As long as this matter was resolved, Xia Ji would no longer need to hide in the profound sword cauldron. On this day, the news that Lin Sun was released from confinement also spread throughout the Yuan sect. Moreover, the news about Lin Sun's participation in the Immortal Cultivation Tournament had already spread. People couldn't help but talk about it. Among the 5 participants, only Deacon Lin is at the early stage of Nirvana God Realm. In this case, he will be at a disadvantage in the Devil regions. Don't speculate. How can such a heaven-defying genius like Deacon Lin be measured by the common sense of the world? Don't forget that Zhong Lizha, who was at the peak of Nirvana God realm, was completely crippled by Deacon Lin. This immortal cultivation tournament is related to the ranking of our sect in the 4 ancestral courts. In my opinion, although it is a little risky to send Deacon Lin, it can also be regarded as a surprise weapon. Who knows, maybe it will bring a surprise to our sect. While people were talking about it, another important news came out. Deacon Lin has accepted a disciple. Who is it? A woman named Summer Solstice has been recognized by Yuan Pure Pavilion and has been issued a disciple token. Summer Solstice? What's the origin of this girl? I don't know. In front of Lin Sun's cave residence, it was also very lively today. Deacon Lin, I heard that you have accepted a disciple. My peak master asked me to send a congratulatory gift. Please accept it. Many big shots sent their disciples to deliver congratulatory gift. Most of these gifts were related to cultivation, including divine materials, precious medicines, etc., all of which were extremely valuable. Lin Sun couldn't help but feel surprised. At the same time, people finally saw the appearance of Lin Sun's female disciple, Summer Solstice. A delicate and lovely girl, like a young girl, in a long black dress, with snow-white skin, stood there charmingly, beautiful and charming. Of course, Lin Sun deliberately changed Summer Solstice's real appearance a lot. If her real appearance was seen by others, it would cause a lot of trouble. After all, sometimes too beautiful would become a femme fatale. It was not until late at night that Lin Sun's cave residence became quiet. In the future, you can walk in the Yuan sect openly, Lin Sun said with a smile as he helped Summer Solstice prepare food. I'm not interested in these. Summer Solstice sat there and ate the food prepared by Lin Sun. Her voice was clear like the tinkling spring water, as beautiful as the sound of nature. At this moment, although her appearance had changed, her eyes were big and bright, and she was still extremely beautiful. I know. Lin Sun handed over a roasted yellow beast leg, but I don't want you to be bored in the profound sword cauldron every day. Summer Solstice said, Lin Sun, how old is Sister Jingxian's child? Lin Sun was stunned and his eyes drifted. It's been decades since I left the mortal world last time. Fan has already grown up, inexplicably. A burst of guilt surged in his heart. He remembered that when he saw his father Lin Wenjing in the flowing light forbidden zone, the latter had also felt guilty for this for a long time. At this time, Lin Sun also understood the feelings of a father. Lin Sun, I also want to have a child for you. Summer Solstice raised her head and looked at Lin Sun seriously. Being stared at like this, Lin Sun felt uncomfortable and a little embarrassed. He coughed dryly and said, Summer Solstice, this matter is not urgent. When I marry you in the future, well, at that time, it will be okay. Summer Solstice's pair of delicate eyebrows frowned. What do you mean by marry? It's marriage. What is marriage? Lin Sun couldn't help but feel a headache. Marriage means that we will be together forever in the future. We will never leave each other, and we will live and die together. Before he finished, Summer Solstice interrupted, Aren't we together now? Lin Sun twitched the corner of his mouth and said, It's different. When we get married, we are husband and wife. In this way, those relatives and friends will know that we are a family in the future. Can't we do it now? Summer Solstice wondered. Lin Sun said, At least, we should let my parents and Jing Xian know about our matter and get their consent. Summer Solstice thought hard for a moment and sighed softly. It's really troublesome. Then I'd better not have children. That way, it won't be so troublesome. After that, she withdrew her gaze and began to focus on the food. Lin Sun, what else could he say? I must find a suitable person to explain these things to Summer Solstice when I have the time. Lin Sun secretly made up his mind. In the following period of time, Lin Sun accompanied Summer Solstice almost all the time. He took her to walk in the Yuan realm, and prepared delicious food for her every day. It was quite a comfortable and fulfilling life. Time flew by, and more than 2 months had passed in a hurry. There was only 1 day left before they had to participate in the Immortal Cultivation Tournament. That night, Lin Sun and Summer Solstice communicated for a long time, trying to get her to stay in the Yuan sect. But no matter how he persuaded, Summer Solstice refused. In the end, Summer Solstice couldn't help but get angry and said, "Lin Sun, are you going to drive me away?" Her words shut Lin Sun up immediately. "Or do you think I am a burden now?" Summer Solstice was very angry, but her beautiful little face was very calm. Her clear eyes stared at Lin Sun, making him feel uncomfortable all over. Lin Sun smiled bitterly and said, "I just don't want you to be worried with me. If something happens to you, do you think I still want to live?" Summer Solstice asked. Lin Sun rubbed his eyebrows and said, "Then let's go together." Summer Solstice immediately showed a bright smile and said, "Okay." Lin Sun looked at her happy smile and couldn't help but be affected, smiling. Early the next morning, in the huge square in front of the central palace of the Yuan realm, when Lin Sun arrived, Yuan Changtian, Chao Beidu, Yun Tianming, and Li Zhen were all there. "Brother Lin, you seem to be in a good mood recently?" Yuan Changtian smiled and greeted. "Not bad," Lin Sun replied with a smile. "Deacon Lin has taken in a new extremely beautiful female disciple. During this period of time, you have been touring the mountains and rivers. Those who don't know would think that Deacon Lin and that female disciple are cultivation companions. Of course, in our cultivation world, there are many people who become cultivation companions between master and disciple. It can't be said to be a violation of human relations and deviant." "Not far away," Chao Beidu said indifferently. Lin Sun raised his eyebrows and looked at Chao Beidu, saying, "Elder Chao, you seem to have some complaints about my disciple?" "Haha, I wouldn't dare." Chao Beidu put on a fake smile. At the side, Yun Tianya said expressionlessly, "Deacon Lin, we're going to the Shaman Ancestral Court to participate in the Immortal Dao battle. We're representing our sect. I hope that Deacon Lin can restrain himself in the future. Don't cause trouble like you did in the past." He paused for a moment and continued, "In the sect, no one will care about what kind of trouble you cause. However, if you cause some trouble in the outside world and affect the reputation of our sect, then you will be a sinner of our sect." Lin Sun laughed. "Peak Master Yun, it seems that my actions are not up to you to criticize. P.S. Let Summer Solstice out for some fresh air on the Double Seventh Festival. Also, Goldfish will have a meal with her and then come back to write the second update."